Upset-minded Aggies up a touchdown on number 5. And how about more? Moose Muhammad, one-hander, my oh my!
Welcome to Sikkim 365 Radio.
Jones is spinning slump. Williams fooled me. Fooled the defense, kept it. A keeper for a touchdown, and Caleb Williams having an outstanding half.
Sikkim 365 Radio is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Here's Edwards with a lay. Donovan Edwards down the sideline. Gets past Ransom. Donovan Edwards. Touchdown, Michigan. The Don.
Sikkim 365 Radio is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
This one is at his best. It's returnable for Williams from the 36. Antonio Williams falls out. The ball comes out, and the special teams of South Carolina take it away again.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
3rd and 10 from the 11. Travis under pressure, trying to escape, able to escape. Turns the corner, stays in bounds. Sports Center top 10.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
It has been what seemed like too long, but we all, I think, probably like some of you as well, needed a little bit of decompression, a little bit of chance to reboot, and hopefully you did. Welcome back, Sikkim 365 Radio, and of course 365 Sports. Everybody is here today, even those who are the ones who make it happen behind the scene. Levi's not, but he's evil. He'll be out when the darkness gets here and the sun goes down. But Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. We're glad to be back in the studio. And what a weekend it was in college football, on the field, off the field, in television numbers, and so much more. And let's start with the coaching carousel. Well, we will get college football standings will be released. We know right now it cannot be anything other than Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and probably USC 1 through 4, and all of them have a chance to play, of course, coming up this weekend. Some had a chance, and they got knocked away like, poof, get away over the weekend. But what was more of the bigger parts of the weekend in college football? Was it the games? Was it the coaching carousel? Which of those two?
It's the games. It's not even close. I understand that the coaching carousel's fun fodder, and, if you're a Nebraska fan, you're probably saying it's the coaching carousel, but it's the games, and it's not even close. I don't watch college football for the coaching changes. The coaches are interesting. The storylines are somewhat fascinating, but all due respect to Matt Rhule, who I like a great deal, give me, the results that matter for the playoff. That's a no-brainer.
And that's why he is being hired, or Luke Fickell to Wisconsin, which kind of came out of nowhere, and a huge Wisconsin hire, along with now Cincinnati tries to rebound. But coaches, the carousel is because of what actually matters, which is on the field.
Yeah, and Hugh Freeze to Auburn is picking up steam again. I guess they've worked through whatever off-the-field stuff that they were worried about, at least for the time being, until he does it again. But I do think that the games this weekend were huge. And when it comes to the playoff, you had two teams, LSU and Clemson, completely eliminate themselves from contention from it by getting upset. You had Ohio State now on the outside looking in for the second year in a row getting muscled up by Michigan, and Jim Harbaugh finally being able to do what he was hired to do.
It just took almost a decade.
It took a long time, but I mean, they had a long time of backlog where Ohio State had been ahead of them. So now, I mean, there's just so much. TCU winning in another different way, right? Best defense in the Big 12 statistically in Iowa State. What did TCU do to them?
Blew their
threw them in
doors
the
off.
wood chipper.
Yeah,
so
they did.
Yeah, it was wild.
All right, Paula, Phil, Paxton, Scotty, Carl, Lee, Sir blah blah blah. I said Paxton. Phil, who's mad about O'Royal getting fired at UNLV. Among Amani is here today. Clint, Email, a lot of you are here today. We appreciate it. I hope I didn't wane. I hope I didn't miss anybody. We are appreciative of you. Jeffrey also a part of it. Stephen a part of it. So many of you. Roy, Laura, many of you. We appreciate you to be a part of what's going on today. Anton as well. So we will hear from Dirk Chatelain. He covers Nebraska football. He's a columnist who wrote a column, basically a letter to Matt Rhule, who was introduced about an hour and a half ago in Lincoln. At 4 o'clock, Luke Fickell is going to be introduced at Wisconsin. And all of the writers at Wisconsin obviously are locked in for that. Not sure if we'll get anybody on in the 5 o'clock hour. That could happen. Also today, the reaction, Chad Brendel, who writes and covers Cincinnati on Fickell leaving. We'll also look back and also maybe more forward with Baylor after their very disappointing and frustrating 6-6 year with Ricky Thompson, his thoughts about what needs to happen going forward. So all of that to say, one of the things that's of interest to me is if you play the conference championship games this weekend, will Georgia, TCU, and Michigan change who is the best team in each of their conferences if they lose?
I don't think so. I mean, in my opinion, no, but I'm not on the committee. I don't get to make that decision. But if they all happen to lose, then it's only recency bias. They still have better resumes through 13 games or 12 games than anybody else because they were all 12-0. So if the resume is if it's really about the full resume, and right now conference championships in this iteration of the playoff don't matter because non-conference champions have made it in the past, then no. I mean, it doesn't. It shouldn't matter what happens this weekend. It ultimately will, and it may. And I don't think Michigan's going to lose to Purdue, but if Michigan lost and TCU lost, would you put Michigan in still because you like the Big Ten better than the Big 12 and the biases of the committee if you think there are some?
Well, let me get back to the question. If TCU or Michigan or if Georgia lose this weekend, does that mean they're not the best teams in the conference in your opinion?
No, not to me.
Craig?
No, not necessarily.
And I don't either. And I forgot who wrote this. I read it. I believe it was sometime yesterday, and it made a lot of sense. Now USC is going to get a chance to eliminate the loss on their record against Utah, which is great for USC. And obviously, if Utah wins, they're out of the picture when it comes to the college football playoff. All right, with that being said, we have seen Ohio State, and then when they got in it, they validated it by winning in 2014, which so much focus was on Baylor and TCU. They get in by hammering everybody down the stretch with their third-string quarterback, and they win the national title. That's a chance that they do it again. Now, whether or not they can do that again after what we saw against Michigan remains to be seen. So a lot to get to. What a weekend. What in college football, in your opinion? Mine was the Michigan second half against Ohio State. Anything, Craig, in your opinion, in college football that stood out the most to you?
That's a loaded question. I mean, there's a ton of stuff.
Yeah, I know that. We'll get to all of the others, too.
No, I wanted to go back. What were you saying about Ohio State just a second ago? About them getting back in?
In 14, they slipped in. They're 5. They'll probably be 5 this year.
Yeah, but they played in a conference title game, though. That's the difference. They're not playing in the conference title game this year. They went and hammered Wisconsin, remember? That's how they got into the...
That's 59-0 or whatever.
They're not playing in the conference title game.
Yeah.
So that's... Okay, just to clear that up, I was wondering. But, yeah, I mean... there's, with an expanded playoff, the opportunity that could happen. But, yeah, Ohio State's, they're pretty much toast, although, as we've seen, some ESPN graphics that are kind of wonky go up over the last 24 hours. I don't know if you guys saw that about the playoff percentages that got people all riled up was, how much the odds still stacked were in the favor of, schools that clearly should be out of it at this point. But I'm thinking, as far as off the top of my head goes, I mean, Michigan's dominance was really surprising, although maybe it shouldn't be that surprising at this point, and just the matter-of-fact way they went about just dismantling Ohio State, making it look almost relatively easy. I was very impressed by Michigan, very impressed just by what Harbaugh's done there to really reverse course after the way he was kind of being viewed just simply for not being able to beat that one team. Like that was the big bugaboo, and now he's beaten them twice. He's beaten them badly, and he looks like he's going to beat them a bunch more times moving forward. I mean, Michigan's at its peak since probably like the late 90s at this point, and maybe even close to surpassing even that level of play. I mean, with the trajectory that they're on right now and with Harbaugh at the helm. So very impressed by that. Just TCU finishing the job. I mean, give them credit. I didn't think that Iowa State was any real threat to them whatsoever, even if they have a good defense. It's just they weren't going to score enough points. So they just simply weren't going to score points. They could barely muster 13 points a week. They weren't going to, hold TCU to 12 and beat them 13-12. So I think for TCU to just handle their business. But what was impressive about it, to do it and not break a sweat. Like, to do it and not, make it all stressful and have it go down to the wire just because you're playing with your – they went out there and just handled their business, and they got to enjoy the entire day as a fan base because they just didn't have anything to stress about. I respect that they didn't have anything to really trouble themselves. Texas, very impressed by how they beat Baylor and how they've closed the season.
How many consecutive running plays did they have to shut the game down and take control of it?
22.
22.
Yeah.
Consecutive plays. They ran with Bijan, Roschon a little bit, and they hammered a team that when they beat Texas last year, it was from what the defense did and also the run game.
Baylor also probably had of course, this last 3 games has been so tragic in different ways for them, but they had sometimes you draw a team at the wrong time, and being the last game on Texas's schedule when a couple of the games that they've lost is because they didn't run the ball enough. Eventually, a coach like Steve Sarkisian is going to go,
it still took him a half.
Yeah,
It still took him a half.
And I think it's just very demoralizing for Baylor because now I don't think they really know what their identity is anymore. I think they've already lost kind of what their identity was a year ago, and now it's like back to the drawing board. And I think anything's basically on the table for discussion, not going crazy like fire Jeff Grimes. I think that would be stupid, but I think everything's up for debate. I mean, what did they do this year that was particularly good? I mean, if you really think what was good week in and week out, the offensive line for the most part, not every week, but compared to other aspects of this team, it was probably as consistent of a unit as they had. But looking everywhere else, I mean, just a lot of inconsistencies. So, I give Texas credit for just, muscling up. And, I guess my biggest thing with Baylor is their identity was being physical. Their identity was being the toughest, hardworking, most competitive. Well, now Joey McGuire is saying all that out in Lubbock. Now Matt Rhule's bringing that back to Lincoln. So, that identity is not by any means exclusive to them, nor was it even when that was what they were saying, because Matt Rhule learned from Penn State, he learned from Temple, he learned from other places. But, they were viewed as hey, they don't have as much talent as Texas or Oklahoma, but they are going to hit you and hurt you and make you feel it. And now I feel like other teams are doing that to them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so who are they? I don't know who they are right now. And their defense that would typically be their calling card isn't their calling card at the moment. They're getting ran on 20-plus straight times to end a game. That defense isn't your calling card if that's occurring, no matter if it's Bijan and Roschon or if it's Teddy and Tommy from some other school. A couple other things. I mean, A&M, credit to them for the win over LSU. I don't think many people saw that coming, even though I guess if you watch this rivalry, it actually makes sense that A&M won this game in so many ways, but got to be a bummer for Garrett and all the Tiger faithful. And Caleb Williams is stupendous. Those are some of the things that stood out to me from this weekend.
Everything you said, I agree with. The thing about Matt Rhule, he hopes he can bring that to Lincoln. Again, he was introduced. Here's a comment from him, and I want to get into a couple of the transfer portal stories involving 2 quarterbacks, among some other stories as well. This is Rhule earlier today about what is his, and he may have heard this when he was at Temple or at Baylor or at Carolina, his philosophy as a head coach of a football program.
We talked a lot about just, hey, what's your philosophy, right? So if you found a player that played for me at any of the 3 places, they'll probably say 5 or 6 things. Don't beat ourselves, win the line of scrimmage, which means run the ball and stop the run, protect and affect the passer. So there's core tenets that I believe in. How you get there. At Temple, we were a fullback in the I formation and, occasionally spread out. When I was at Baylor, I had 4 NFL wide receivers. We were spread out. But at the end of the day, the offensive linemen and the defensive linemen in high school football, college football, and in the NFL, they determine it. So in terms of getting there, I'm walking in a little bit blind in terms of, I've seen the games on TV. I've had a chance to watch. This process has gone on so long, so I've had a chance. But, I'll have to get into spring. I'll have to see where we are to know that. But for me, it's just a vision. A vision doesn't mean that's the picture that's here. The picture that's here, I have to get into that. But the vision is to build up front, and that's not just recruiting. That's also the weight room. That's also the way that we want to train. And I'm confident because we've done that at Temple. I think right now there's 24 guys playing in the National Football League from Temple and Baylor combined, and none of those guys were 4- and 5-star recruits. But we were able to develop them, so that'll be our plan here as well.
All right, so that's Matt Rhule. Paul, thanks for peeling that out from earlier today. We'll have a little bit more in the 5 o'clock hour with him, and then at some point this week, he will be a guest on this show. Luke Fickell will be introduced at 4, so we'll have more of that reaction from Wisconsin writers later on tomorrow.
Can I ask a question here? What do you think about Matt Rhule going to Nebraska?
Yeah.
Like, damn, man, like you've talked to him, him. He was here at Waco.
I'll say this now that it's official. I was, involved in at least asking him a lot of different questions the last 7 to 10 days. And to me, when I knew it was real, and I don't know if I've shared this or not, but I knew it was real is when I was telling him about what he will experience there. Not that I ever did, but I know what that fan base has been through. I know how spoiled they were, and I know how loyal they are, despite the fact they have been 6 consecutive non-bowl winning bowl teams. They need someone who's going to go in there and get his hands dirty, mold clay or mud or whatever. Remember, when he came to Baylor, I used to have people all the time, why the hell is he talking about the process? They'd lose to Liberty, lose to UTSA, lose to Duke, lose to everybody but Kansas State. And then also developing NFL players. He never said he was going to have 5-star players who were going to go like Bijan to the NFL. What he said is learning how to be a professional football player. And if they talk to former players at Baylor, that's kind of what he's going to try to do. I'm excited. I'm excited. Luke Fickell would have been great, but I'm excited. Luke Fickell wasn't going to Nebraska. He's going to go to Lincoln. So I'm excited. Wisconsin. I don't know whether or not it will take him again, that 2 or 3 year stretch. I saw a team play Friday against Iowa who I didn't even recognize for at least the first 3 quarters. And then, here we go, 24-0, 24-7. I'm excited. I hope it works out for him. And that's pretty impressive. All of a sudden, the guy that I know is now the head coach at the University of Nebraska.
Yeah, I think that they were smart to – I think this is the first coach they've had that by hiring Matt Rhule, you're saying this needs to be rebuilt. Hiring Mike Riley and Bo Pelini, that was maybe the paddles at the time, resuscitate him for a minute because he did bring a little bit of juice back into the program. It just couldn't work. But Bill Callahan, all that happened was not acknowledging where you actually were. When you hire Matt Rhule, as a college team, you're acknowledging we want a guy who's going to build from the ground up.
Which is what he's done, which he didn't do at Carolina, obviously, but he did it at Temple, which was a laughingstock in football, and he did it in at Baylor, which was overcoming what was about 2 or 3 years of hell, quite frankly, and he found a way to make it. Didn't work out early, and there were even times his second year where you wondered, but they turned the corner. They had the team that went to a bowl game at 11-3 and lost to Georgia in the Sugar Bowl in Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, I mean they've been a mess of a program.
6
for the most part,
consecutive years where they've not been to a bowl game.
Yeah, nearly as many head coaches since they were last really nationally relevant in 2001 when Crouch and company got crushed by the greatest team of all time in 01 Miami. But since then it's been hit or miss. Mostly miss here lately. Some bad hires, some hires that maybe work out under different circumstances. But, I like Matt Rhule a great deal. I think he is a really good football coach. I think he belongs at the college level. I was disappointed to see him leave Baylor, a few years back, but understood that people have to go live their dreams. And he wanted to be an NFL head coach. And, people can say all they want about he said this or whatever. I wouldn't hold anybody back from living their dream. As far as that goes, I understand Baylor fans kind of, sour feelings about him leaving, but that's just the nature of the game. Like, that's college football, baby. Like, that's the way that it works. Unless you're, Michigan or Ohio State or, whoever, and even some of those schools, and even some of the schools we normally refer to, like in Oklahoma. I mean, you see them struggling. They're already questioning that's just how it works, man. It's always moving and going, and the fight to stay relevant is really hard. But I know that he had Baylor feeling like they were knocking on the door, and luckily Dave Aranda was able to, kick that door open for them not too long after that, and kind of, I think, ease some of those feelings a little bit. But when he was around, people, for the most part, loved him. I know he was beloved in Temple. I know that Nebraska fans are probably quickly falling in love with him as well. He's going to bring some energy. He's going to have a tough, hard-nosed football team, and he's going to do a lot of what he says, and if not all of what he says. So I think it's a great hire, and I think Nebraska fans should be happy. Now, at the same time, Luke Fickell, we kind of touched on it, but that's a big loss for Cincinnati entering the Big 12. That is a massive loss for them. I know that they've had a great history of kind of just finding, not necessarily finding, but just getting another coach in there who can make it work. They've had their ups and down moments as far as the head coaching, goes, but they've been able to just kind of always find their way back, eventually. And Luke Fickell, a really good coach, but going to the Big Ten just like Matt Rhule now, and, they're going to get rid of divisions at some point, and this is all going to be the case around college football where everybody is just the best of the best going at it. And, Nebraska, I think, made their big splash with Rhule. Wisconsin made a giant splash with Luke Fickell. Y'all in line behind Harbaugh. Ohio State's wondering about Ryan Day now all of a sudden, but it's still Ohio State. Penn State with James Franklin. Like, the Big Ten's really shaping up to be some heavy hitters, more so than they already are. And so I think Rhule and Fickell are tremendous additions to that conference, and I'm very curious about how they're going to kind of jockey for that second, I don't know if I'd call it the second tier, but kind of the B tier.
You have your
behind
elite,
Ohio State and Michigan.
At 8, 9, 7 wins.
But they've got to get to the B tier before they can get to the A tier. They can't just pass it. And I love the Luke Fickell hire to Wisconsin along with the Matt Rhule hire because, look, realignment's happening, right, in that conference. Lincoln Riley in a year brought USC back from the dead. So that team's coming in. They're not slowing down, being able to just rope in everybody in LA,
right,
in that area.
And one thing about Rhule that's interesting, guys, is that he never had really did not have so much the transfer portal. He had graduate transfers, and there was no NIL either.
Yeah.
And Nebraska, although they don't have the money like Ohio State or Alabama or A&M or Texas or whoever, they have a very healthy NIL situation going there.
It's not far off, though.
It really is for a place like that.
Yeah, and so, but look, like Wisconsin, I really thought they were going to go for Jim Leonard. I thought he was their coach of the future. I think they liked him, but I do think that they recognize that going into the new Big Ten, you need to put a stamp on what you're about to do, or you're going to be left behind for a while. Look, and I left out UCLA, just had the best season they've had in forever. Mm-hmm. How long?
Chip Kelly.
Yeah, Chip Kelly coming in. So you've got all this stuff going on in the Big Ten right now. If you're not ready to be a heavy hitter, then
you could be in
get out
mediocrity
of the way.
like Nebraska's been for 6 years. One of the note, by the way, I just went blank. Dang it, I just went blank on one of the questions about the coaching things we were talking about. But it's going to be fun. I mean, it is, to me, that's why when I brought up the start of the show, the games that matter lead to the coaching changes or other coaches getting opportunities, and it's been interesting. I want to say one note about the Michigan-Ohio State game. J.J. McCarthy, who was spectacular, his 3 longest touchdown passes this year, all 3 came against the Buckeyes on Saturday.
Well, that was a story. They hit the big plays.
Yep.
They hit the big plays, and even without their best running back in Blake Corum, they've had other very talented players. Harbaugh's done a great job of building up the talent pool, building up the depth, and just being a damn good program. And Wolverines were ready for it. They were ready for war, and they brought it to Ohio State. And I think, the big edge they had was just hitting some huge explosive plays and hitting multiple ones. So, that was a great win for Michigan. They're on top of the peak in the Big Ten. Got to close it out, obviously, with the conference championship win and then go get in the playoff and see what they can do there. But they're at their best, like I said, in probably 30 or close to 30 years or so, give or take. 97? So about 25 years since Michigan's been, you know, and I know that they, you know, were in the playoff last year, but still, I mean, as far as like having this kind of mojo, beating Ohio State back-to-back, beating them down back-to-back, I mean.
Physically being bigger, stronger.
That's something that we haven't really seen, so they're in a great spot, and now you've got these other coaches coming in, and eventually USC and UCLA, and I think that, you know, this is obviously, you know, I think when you see a Luke Fickell joining Wisconsin, I mean, one, it's a really good job, but given the pool of sharks you're jumping into versus what you were jumping into in the Big 12, I do think this opens the door to, you know, there's a lot of other jobs. Like, there's jobs not open yet. There's some that are not as high profile that have been filled that we need to talk about too, but you know, this is all realignment. Paul, I think you brought up that word a few minutes ago. I mean, that's very much what you're seeing, I think, with some of these coaching moves and the effect that that's going to have. And, you know, the haves and the have-nots, or the have-a-lots and have-not-as-muches. And, the Big Ten's kind of already showing some of that separation right now.
Well, and look,
go ahead.
By the way, Hugh Freeze.
That's
happening.
all but done. Yeah,
that's all but done. I will say this: in addition to that realignment, I think there's a coach at Stanford who moved on because Stanford got left out of this round of realignment, right? And they fit the Big Ten more than the schools almost that went there do, because of their academic profile, everything that they do. But they got left behind in this round because right now nobody's going to the games. There's no excitement around Stanford football. And the other thing about Stanford, and I think this really hurt David Shaw, is you cannot be the school who claims to be the best at everything, and they are. I'm not saying they're not. They're the school. Like, when you think about the school that does everything, that has Ivy League level athletics and D1 level sports and wins championships and competes and is always there, the front door of, you know, what most people see can't be that bad.
No.
And
did you see the stadium?
Yeah, it's empty.
Oh, it's worse than any other thing I've ever seen before.
Football is less important at Stanford than it is at most places, but it's still really important.
Yeah.
And I think that's what got David Shaw.
You respond to it, and then I'm going to go down a list of other coaches who have been either changed, fired, or what.
Yeah, that's what we need to do. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think Stanford needs to figure out what they want to do, because I don't know the situation there, obviously personal level, but you hear plenty of people who seem to know people or have been there before who do talk about, like, I'm not sure how much they really want to be, you know, like, competitive and in this kind of deal. So figure that out, Stanford. Figure that out. You know, I actually think, like, a Dave Aranda would be a great coach at Stanford.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And at the same time, though, I don't know that, you know, that's going to be competitive enough for him ultimately. You know, I think that, like, on the surface, like, the characteristics and whatnot, it'd be a perfect spot for him, but I just don't know if they're going to be as into it as he would probably want them to be. But yeah, that's a very interesting opening. So let's get to the openings and get to all of them. And to be clear on the Hugh Freeze thing, you're talking about him going to Auburn.
Yes,
that's
from Liberty.
Now, okay.
Which is all but official. I haven't seen it official. Some of you in the chat room, but also on some other reporters who also covered coaching change.
Yeah, and I did see this before you go on that list, because Max Olson just mentioned this. This is a tie-in to people we know, but Evan Cooper, no surprise, expected to join Matt Rhule in Nebraska.
And Scott Satterfield, who's at Marcus Satterfield at South Carolina. They just turned it on. How about them the last couple of weeks? There's a report that he's going to be the offensive coordinator there. Rhule did not say anything official. He kind of mentioned what he was going to do. He had not even talked to the current staff. There's a lot of push about them wanting to keep Mickey Joseph, but that's going to depend on the fit and also personalities. Matt Rhule's normal thing is to go in and bring almost everybody that he's known at some place, Temple or wherever, Carolina, and also at Baylor. Willie Fritz, there was a report over the weekend about Georgia Tech. He negated that today, or knocked that down today. They have a game to play in a conference championship game. Would not surprise me if Willie Fritz is not involved in somebody else's program next year because of what he's done. But he denied that today, saying he's focused on the game, and maybe that's just to get through this week.
Well, and you wonder, like, where he'd land now at this point, because there's not a lot of jobs as
Georgia
open.
Tech was,
Georgia Tech was the rumor, but, you know, if it's not there, then where else is he going to go is what I'm saying. But regardless, nice win by Tulane. Granted, it looks a little different when Luke Fickell bolts Cincinnati, like, directly afterwards, but still a good win for the Green Wave over the Bearcats.
Okay, of coaching,
tough exit for Cincinnati as they start to get ready for Big 12 play.
Cincinnati's Fickell on his way out, they lose. Arizona State, who was it?
Oregon.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm talking about coaches. Dillingham's going to Arizona State. That's one of the stories.
Oregon lost.
But other coaches who were rumored to be thinking about other jobs is what I'm looking at. No, the head coach at Oregon was not.
No, but Kenny Dillingham was.
I know
and he's
that.
the
I'm talking about head coaches who were rumored to be looking elsewhere. Ole Miss lost, right?
Yeah.
They got beat as well. There was another pretty big name that lost.
Hugh Freeze.
Hugh Freeze. Obviously, Liberty was upset over the weekend. So Dillingham is headed to Arizona State. Tulsa, this is a sad story for us. We know him. He's a great dude. And Philip Montgomery, longtime Baylor offensive coordinator, was at Tulsa 8 years, had kind of an up and down at times, some great moments, and also 5-7 despite beating Houston. He's been fired at Tulsa. Jake Spavital, we've had him on the show from Texas State, 4 years. He is out. Marcus Arroyo, 5-7, UNLV, had a lot of injuries this year. He was fired today by UNLV, and our buddy up in Vegas, Phil Benzer's not real happy about that. So there's Dion, been offered, confirmed he was offered to take the job at Colorado. Doesn't mean he will, doesn't mean he'll talk to them, but he was offered the job.
I don't think that's a fit. But I mean, I think he'd do a good job. I just don't think that for his personality, Colorado's a fit. But you never know. I also
could be for a year or two until somebody else comes calling.
Yeah, exactly. And another assistant firing happened today. Daryl Dickey, offensive coordinator at A&M, is out, which is significant in that if Jimbo Fisher wants to keep his job past next year, he's got to let loose of the reins, and I doubt you would fire Daryl Dickey if you weren't doing that. But then again, it could all be window dressing. Jimbo Fisher can bring somebody in and tell him he's got play calling, but he's going to have to not run over and
going to have to let it go.
Let him do. Yeah.
Just like, by the way, on the Luke Fickell, this is what I was going to remember about Luke Fickell. Luke Fickell wants he is new. He's new blood to them. One of the things I read column after column after column about Luke Fickell and how there are so many people that wanted, again, the dark cloud of Barry Alvarez, who did a great job at Wisconsin as a coach, and then the AD, of wanting to get new blood and get away from what has been this Barry Alvarez run Wisconsin program, even when he was no longer the coach and or even with the university. All right, we got a couple of quotes later on in the show. One from Kevin Warren about Ohio State and the college football playoff, which he's only doing his job. We'll have that a little bit later on in the show. There's a lot of others as well. The Broyles Award, we'll have the 5 finalists that were announced today. The men's basketball national rankings, by the way, just a little note, Houston is 1. Good for Calvin Sampson, future Big 12 program. Texas is 2. Baylor is 6. Kansas is 9. Iowa State moved in. They beat North Carolina. They're at 23. Baylor plays Marquette tomorrow night on the road, and then in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, on Friday against Gonzaga, who dropped. North Carolina dropped from 1st to 18th in the poll after losing a couple of times, but one of them a 4 overtime game to Alabama.
Oh, by the way, we did get a super chat that I want to address before we go to the break from GMAC. Sad to see Fickell go. This makes sense as he plans to be the next Ohio State coach. Easier transition to Ohio State. If you're already in the Big Ten, I guess we'll see about that. I think Wisconsin is a pretty darn good place to be until Ryan Day's, would be gone, but I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
Man, I don't know, dude. I don't think it's happening like in the next few months, but I think that that is something that – who was that sent that?
GMAC.
That GMAC – I mean, that's a fair question because I'd be wondering the same thing if I'm a Wisconsin fan. That would be the only drawback to this is like, okay, but – what happens if Ohio State comes open? Because let's face it, guys, what kind of guarantee does Ryan Day have past this immediate future? I mean, he's not going to get fired right now. He's not going to get fired if they, don't win their bowl game. But if they don't beat Michigan again next year and the year, it's not that far away in theory, even if they're winning 9-10 games a year, because that's still Ohio State. Now, the standard is super high there, but all it takes is for you to start losing to your rival and watch them go off and have some success. And he's already been kind of a guy in comparison to his predecessors where I don't know, people are as all in and convinced that he's the guy to lead the program as compared to, let's say, an Urban Meyer without all of the flaws. Like as far as just a football coach who can be successful, I don't know that he's proven that he's a national championship head. He hasn't, right? Yeah. So that's the goal there. So I think that, it's not happening in the next year, but 2 or 3 years down the line, I don't think that's
especially
that crazy.
If it's Michigan who keeps beating them up.
Immediate predecessor didn't lose to Michigan at all.
No.
Ever.
No.
And the guy before him didn't lose to Michigan, but like once or twice, right?
Well, one note on
So-
Michigan, Ohio State. They have met prior to this year. This is the 5th time they've met. Both teams were undefeated. Ohio State had won 3 of those games, and I think one year they actually may have tied back in the day. So that was in this, 3-0-1 Ohio State against Michigan in the previous 4 meetings until Saturday, Michigan's first win when both were undefeated. Quick hit here. TCU, we mentioned their game. They took control, grabbed Iowa State by the throat, as Craig mentioned, and never even blinked in that game against the Cyclones to carry themselves into a much-deserved opportunity to win the Big 12 championship game. We mentioned Texas and Baylor and how Texas basically all but really just ran it right down Baylor's throat, 22 consecutive runs, finally just giving it to the best player on the field in Bijan Robinson. Texas Tech at home in a crazy game. Crazy. 51-48 in overtime. Oklahoma was up, I think, 17-0. Great win for Joey and McGuire and the Red Raiders. 51-48. They go 7-5 in Oklahoma. You had mentioned it with Venables. They finished the year, at least the regular season, 6-6.
I feel like I have to do this because, people get their panties in a wad, but this is not to take away from Texas Tech. That was a horrific loss for Oklahoma that had not as much to do with Tech as like Tech just dominating and winning that game. That was just... I really just, that's kind of just a perfect way to end the year for Oklahoma and Brent Venables. That was a really tough game to watch at multiple different turning points, and you can break it down all kinds of different ways. But, boy, this offseason is going to be fascinating for them because I am in no way sold that this is just like the stumbling block before the huge rise. There's a lot of questions about that football team, including Dylan Gabriel now as well. Mm-hmm. And so... I mean, to lose that game in the fashion that they did after the lead that they had, the lead wasn't safe. Like, I do think that when they called the trick play to try and go up 21-0 and, end up not walking away with any points, I do think on the, the fake attempt, that was a bad call. But I know that if it had succeeded, people would have been like, oh, it was the greatest call ever. And I realized that. But I realized field goals aren't probably going to beat Tech, but 3 points would have beaten Tech. You were up 14-0. You could have been up 17-0, and you had all of the momentum in the world. The crowd was dead in Lubbock, and instead, you go for the fake. It busts, doesn't work. Tech goes down and scores, and all of a sudden, they're back into it. It's 14-7, and then it's a game, and I just felt like you were just trying to bite off way more than you could chew there. I know if it had been reversed, we'd be calling Venables a genius for it, but I just thought that was a terrible misstep with all the momentum that you had, even if you were going for the kill shot, but there were other problems in that game. Great win for Tech. Good for them to win 7 games. That's huge.
They finished 4th in the Big 12 with their 5-4 record, and it was a nice way to close it out because there was a time, 3 weeks ago when you wondered if Tech would get to 6 wins and become bowl eligible. Oklahoma still led that game at one point, not only 17-0, but 24-6.
Awful loss.
Awful loss. I tell you what. Texas Tech did everything. The defense got lit up, 51-48. Both of them did. And the throwback to Dylan Gabriel to start overtime, where he gets hurt, was kind of an epitome of this season. To pick up a first down, that's only if you're going to probably score on that play. He goes out, Bevels comes in, whatever his name is, and I mean...
His name is Davis Bevel, we saw him in the Texas game, and we saw that the offense isn't very functional when he's in there, so... maybe a brilliant call, again, like the fake field goal if you're, seeing the other result, but you didn't. You saw instead, not only was it a bad call, it got your freaking quarterback hurt to start overtime. It got your quarterback hurt and knocked out of the game to start overtime. Yep. Man, that was a mess.
And Tyler Shuck, how about him? Good for him after an up-and-down year with injuries and losing his job, and he goes 436 for 2 touchdowns. He wasn't flawless, but he also really frustrated Oklahoma with his running game. Gabriel had 449 and 6 touchdowns, but, man, there were some throws that he wishes he had back. Kansas State, it wasn't easy. Kansas kept fighting like a Lance Leipold team will do, but they just had too much for the Jayhawks, got a big lead early, and then kind of coasted. And how about West Virginia going 5-7 in the win against Oklahoma State? And some of those games I loved it, pouring down rain. I wasn't there, that's why I loved it, but there were a lot of games affected by the weather too.
No program in America wanted to lose more, but yet won more than they wanted to than West Virginia. It's like, we don't want to win games, and he's going out there just beating Oklahoma State, beating Baylor. Yeah, kudos to Neil Brown, but I mean, nobody's happy about it, really. It's the weirdest dynamic there is. And then you add in that they're clearly not making a move when everybody else has already made their move. I know that was kind of indicated through the buyout that he has, that they probably weren't going to do anything this year, but then the AD changes, and it'll be interesting to see how much rope he's given. But yeah, West Virginia's grabbing wins despite the fact that even their own fans aren't all that happy about it.
All right, when we come back, we're going to hear from Dirk Chatelain. He covers Nebraska. His thoughts, what's been the reaction in Lincoln to Matt Rhule, hired by the Huskers. A little bit later on, Chad Brendel from Bearcat Journal on Cincinnati losing the guy that has put them up on this beautiful little run at Cincinnati. What's next for them? And so much more. This is 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, lowt.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you need to be. And by the way, maybe you once were. Maybe there's something that just doesn't feel right with you. And I mean by that is your energy. You're not sleeping well. You just aren't focused as much. And yes, it could also be something that's happening with you when it comes to your sex drive and ED. One of the things about Dr. Kent Petty, if you get blood work from him, is he's going to look for testosterone, because that's a lot of what he does. But he also will look for other issues as well. And what is, for example, your PSA count, and looking and always monitoring for any kind of concerns with prostate cancer. He has a program. If your testosterone is too low, he can put you in a program to increase it so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be at pettycliniclowt.com.
This month, Allen Samuelson Waco is having the Black Friday sales event. You can save big on the new 2022 Ram 1500 Crew Cab with total values up to $4,250 with 2.9% for 72 months. That's right, plus an extra $500 bonus cash to first responders and no payments until January 2023. Shop an award-winning dealership with award-winning product. Allen Samuelson Waco, the place to shop Ram trucks.
Come by. Let's be friends.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
Waco Custom Marketplace is your home for holiday favorites for parties or time with the family, with various specials available while supplies last in store or ordering by phone, including 8 to 10 pound half spiral hams at $4.15 a pound, 12-pound pit hams at $4.35 a pound, 8 to 22 pound bone-in hams for $3.40 a pound, 14 to 16 pound whole raw turkeys at $2.85 a pound, and $4.80 a pound for 9 to 12 pound whole smoked turkeys, 6 to 8 pound mini pit hams for $5.99 a pound. Limit 4 of each item per customer. Call in advance to ensure availability or drop by Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. Waco Custom Marketplace, your full-service butcher shop for customized orders or cuts of your favorite steaks or beef tenderloin or specially ordered prime rib roast. WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
We have mentioned Matt Rhule in Nebraska, played a couple of clips of what he said today. We all know him, we covered him, and of course his career know it well. Dirk Chatelain of the Omaha World Herald covers Nebraska, wrote a column, a letter to Matt Rhule, and I read it. It made a lot of sense, and Dirk joins us on 365 Sports. Dirk, what would you say has been the reaction, not so much to the hire, but what the reaction's been since the press conference?
Well, you guys will not be surprised by this, but Matt Rhule is pretty good at press conferences, especially opening press conferences. He was really, really impressive. He hit all the right notes, made all the right priorities and points of emphasis. He had a couple nice touches talking about, Nebraska 1983 and his Penn State connection there, and Nebraska 1994 and his Penn State connection. And he's very savvy. He reminds me of he reminds me of a preacher, and he reminds me of a politician. And I mean that in a good way. So, like I said, these things won't surprise you, but I think he probably swayed a few doubters. Nebraska fans are reluctantly optimistic about this because they've been burned many times before. But I think everybody recognizes that Rhule has a track record that is sort of tailor-made for Nebraska's situation.
Dirk, is he the first coach they've hired since Frank Solich that is acknowledging that this is a rebuild and not a just turn Nebraska onto a different street kind of thing that they were trying to pull off before?
Well, it's a great question because you're right. So Nebraska went Frank Solich, which was taken over for Tom Osborne. That was obviously just compete for national championships with a different head coach type of situation, or at least tried to. Bill Callahan, that was supposed to be a quick reload because Frank Solich was coming off a 10-3 season. Bo Pelini, that was a quick reload. Mike Riley, that was coming off a 9-win season. So you're right. Frost was the closest, but because he was an alum and because he was coming off 13-0 at Central Florida, there was really no grace for a rebuild there. This is by far the most freedom that a coach has ever had to sort of stumble around and find himself a little bit.
Dirk, what's your understanding about how quickly this came together and kind of the lead up to this happening for Nebraska?
I think this played out over quite a long period of time. I think Rhule had an interesting contract situation in Carolina where he was going to get paid a whole lot of money regardless of whether he was coaching next year or not. So I think he had a notion to sit out entirely. And that would not have surprised people in the college world, I think, had he sat out next year entirely. But, Nebraska is, I think, especially of people from that generation, and Matt Rhule's a couple years older than me, but I think especially of that era, Nebraska still carries a lot of weight. And, when they're offering $9 million and a chance to coach in the Big Ten Conference, which has got all the resources that you could ever want, I think it was hard for people to your point. I think it took a very long time to sort of get all the details ironed out.
So I know there was a lot of interest because he's a popular figure, former quarterback, and then he took over when Frost was fired with Mickey Joseph. I listened to Matt Rhule in his discussion about the staff. He was going to meet with them eventually. Is that going to be something that he has to weave through? Is that going to be something that fans understand you have to be who Matt Rhule wants you to be, or as far as what he wants on his staff?
Well, first of all, I feel like I should be interviewing you guys because you know more about Matt Rhule than I do. But I think it's going to be tough to make it work with Mickey Joseph because, first of all, I think it's hard for a new head coach to hire someone who just occupied that seat for 3 months and was very popular with the fan base. I don't think you want to have any sort of confusion about who's in charge. And I think it's tough from Mickey's perspective too, because, you know, you occupy that spot for 3 months and suddenly you're the glorified receivers coach or whatever. So I don't know if it's going to work out. I think the fans would love it if it did, but I don't see it. I see a lot of obstacles in the way.
Again, Dirk Chatelain, he covers Nebraska football. Matt Rhule introduced after the story over the weekend. He was going to become the new Nebraska football coach, replacing Scott Frost. Now, the question is, this isn't easy, but I remember one time trading a text with him as he was no longer with Carolina about, you know, how this would be a tough job. But he's taken tough jobs with Temple and also Baylor. Doesn't that kind of set this up of what he wants to do to get his hands dirty, to mold the clay? Isn't that what Nebraska needs?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, there's been discussion about, you know, is Luke Fickell a better hire or is Matt Rhule a better hire? And I think the reality is Luke Fickell might be better for Wisconsin and Matt Rhule might be better for Nebraska because I think Fickell is walking into a little bit healthier culture. You know, where it's probably a little bit more ready-made, I guess. Nebraska's got work to do, you know, and I think maybe the potential for Nebraska might be a little bit higher than Wisconsin because of the financial resources. I think are a little bit greater here when everything's really humming. But it's going to take a head coach who isn't afraid to start from scratch. And everything that I've heard, you know, Matt Rhule is very comfortable in that environment. So. I think Nebraska is ready for that type of coach, and I think Rhule is probably really excited that if he can sort of do what he did at Temple and Baylor, the ceiling, you know, is going to be as high as it was at Baylor, if not a little bit higher.
Dirk, what do you think the biggest thing that he has to wrap his arms around in the short term is?
Well, there's a really interesting situation here at Nebraska with because of the portal and NIL. I think a lot of roster decisions are going to be made here in probably the next month. I think Nebraska is an appealing target for NIL and transfers. You know, there's a pretty good collective here. I think the financial resources for boosters here are such that Nebraska is going to be very competitive with NIL. So it'll be very interesting to see how aggressive Rhule is right out of the gate when it comes to the portal, or if he wants to sit back and sort of, you know, build from within or build from the grassroots. I think there is an opportunity at Nebraska that you saw this year with Casey Thompson and Trey Palmer and O'Shawn Mathis, who went from TCU to Nebraska. There is an opportunity, I think, to get some high-profile transfers. I just don't know if Rhule is going to want to do that.
Dirk, thank you very much. In fact, the man of what we're talking about, Matt Rhule, is about to join us here on 365 Sports. We appreciate you. Let's stay in touch, okay?
All right. Thank you, guys.
Dirk Chatelain of the Omaha World Herald will join us again down the road along with some others. Mitch Sherman of theathletic.com is also going to join us as well. We'll hear from Matt Rhule, Nebraska football coach, here in the next 30 seconds to a minute here on 365 Sports. And so we'll hear from him, the new Nebraska coach, former head coach at Temple, with what he did there and also with what he did also at Baylor University. And he now joins us on 365 Sports. Matt Rhule, the head coach at Nebraska, right here on 365 Sports with Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and David Smoak. How do you feel today?
Smoak, is this you?
Yes, sir. How you doing, Coach? How do you feel today?
You don't sound excited enough.
I have to be a journalist here, Matt. I have to be.
Okay.
No. I'm thrilled with this hire as a Huskers fan.
I'm fired up, man. I tell you what, we had such a great experience at Baylor, and coming here today, I think my wife and the kids, we all feel sort of that same feeling. Great place to live. great program, and we've met nothing but great people so far.
You are, a fan of college football in its very essence of everything. And you mentioned that through the press conference today when I saw on ESPN the other day about being at Nebraska. What is that like to hear your name attached to a program with that history?
Well, I'd say it's surreal. I'd say there's also a lot of responsibility. College football is better when Nebraska's great. And so for me, I'm excited to do it. I also know that I have to get to work and get it done. I want to make sure that everyone in the state of Nebraska, all the Nebraska fans, Husker Nation, that they're proud of the team.
Coach, you're not waiting long to dive back into things. You certainly could have, sat back. I think most people would have understood and, bided your time, maybe taken a little bit of a break. Was it Nebraska, and what about just wanting to get back into it really fueled this decision for you?
Well, I think, I love coaching. I love being around young people, and the college game presents a lot of opportunities to build a team, to build culture in the locker room, and I missed that. And then I'd say this opportunity was a special one. Storied history, tremendous resources, tremendous facilities. We're just finishing up $150 million facility for the student athletes. And when I think about the way that I like to do things, to be physical, to practice hard, to develop players. That's really what Nebraska's history is all about. So once I met Trev Alberts, I knew that, this would be a great, great, great fit. And the rest is history.
Matt, does recruiting still burn in your belly? Recruiting high school players and even now college players because of the transfer portal?
Yeah, I love that part of it. I love getting to know young people. I love getting to know their families. I love seeing what makes them tick. I'm proud when we went to practice the Patriots this year and Bill Belichick's raving about Tyquan Thornton. I'm proud when I see JT Woods walk across the stage, and then also see him get drafted. I think those are the things that drive you, and it all starts with recruiting. It all starts with evaluating the right players. You go back to those signing classes that produced those kids that all got drafted this year, and the Texas A&Ms, they had higher rated recruiting classes and less draft picks. And I think that evaluation is a forgotten art. And guys that we've had, guys like Evan Cooper and Fran Brown and many more, always did such a great job of that.
I know we don't have you for very long, so I have to ask you this question. Are you concerned at all with what you've done, taking this job and being friends with Smokey?
To tell you what, there's not a better guy on earth to be friends with. I just can't wait till I make a bad call on third down and all of a sudden his ire is burning towards me.
Coach, how much do you have to brush up on just how different college football is from when you left it just a couple of years ago in terms of what's allowed and what's not?
I got started right away. I started talking to people right away, and kind of the refrain from most guys was like, hey, none of us really know what's happening. So obviously Joey McGuire is a great friend of mine, talking to him, talking to Sat at South Carolina, talking to a lot of different guys. I think everyone's sort of in uncharted territory. So this has been a good time for me over the last weeks to figure it out. But nothing will ever compare to the situation when we first got to Baylor, and not a lot of recruits in a short amount of time. So we'll figure it out. We've got good guys and good evaluators, and at the end of the day, it still always comes down to the players. Are they having a good experience? Do they enjoy being there? Are you doing right by them?
Matt, we are right smack in the heart of Texas where you coached. And Texas High School Football Coaches Association really admired you, and you had a great relationship with them. It does appear that recent years Nebraska's gotten away from this state. Can you have a recruiting class without at least a nice handful from the state of Texas?
Yeah, we will be in Texas, and we'll be everywhere in Texas. Texas high school football is a passion of mine. I'm still a THSCA member. I will fill my staff with people that I know can go in and recruit Texas. And I think the college football is kind of moving into a world of the SEC and the Big Ten are going to be the halves. And so obviously A&M and UT are in the SEC, but if guys want to play, at noon on Fox, if they want to play, in the Big Ten, right now Nebraska is their closest answer. So we're going to build a team much like we did at Baylor, that guys want to be a part of. And we're going to come to Texas and get as many as we can.
Is there any chance you have yet officially added anybody to your staff?
Yeah, nothing's official yet. Evan Cooper's, here with me. Corey Campbell, who was with us at Baylor's with me. And I know Terrence Knighton's been reported. So we're going to meet some of the guys on the staff here. There's some really good coaches here. But I think you'll see a lot of familiar names, as we finalize the staff.
Are you going to bring back the fullback to Nebraska?
Yeah, if you go back, remember, we had some fullback even at Baylor, and so we will always utilize a fullback at some point. You see what Kansas State is doing. We'll try to be multiple. We'll try to do a lot of different things and take advantage of the players that we have.
Matt, I know you got to go to a donor event. The question again is you have terms that you use, and I've told this to some Nebraska columnist, analyst, whatever. The process, players who maybe not initially people think are NFL caliber talent, but can learn how to be pro players. How much do you lay your foundation on those two things?
Yeah, that's what it's all about. We all want to recruit the best players possible, but for me, the best players possible are who I see. When I look at them, do I see how they can help me win the championship? Do I see how they can be an NFL player? And you turn around and you see Jalen Petrie going in the second round. And again, I don't take all the credit for that. I mean, Dave and his staff have done an amazing job. But just, that initial recruiting process, the Terrell Bernards of the world, if you have a great eye for, hey, this is what works for us and this is what we can develop, you should trust that. And we'll continue to trust that. And there'll be a lot of NFL players coming out of Nebraska real soon.
When will you sleep next?
Guys, I haven't slept for a while. I don't plan on anytime soon. But this is exciting for me. This is what I love to do, and I'm excited to get started.
Thank you, man. We appreciate it. We know you had a tight window with us. We do appreciate you. Congratulations, and we'll be in touch.
Congrats,
I'll be
Coach.
in touch with you. You know that.
First radio show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you. Okay. Our audience appreciates you as well. That's Nebraska football coach Matt Rhule sliding in with us. He was at the introductory press conference, post-press conference, questions, went to a couple of events, has a donor event to get to, in fact, right now with his family and also others at the University of Nebraska.
I really don't think he quite understands what he's done. Like, he, really should have probably thought about that Auburn job where you wouldn't bother him. I mean, other people would, but you wouldn't. So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of another. But I don't know. This is a special gift. Like, I don't know if I could be mature enough if Mike Norvell was my friend, right? I don't know. I think I could, but like there would be those moments where I'm like, what are you doing?
Let me tell you, and I am happy when that all of a sudden turned a little bit towards the early to mid part of last week. One of the things I did share this with him is I know that there's been a couple of games when a Nebraska booster had to buy tickets for them too to keep that crazy streak alive. That's been going on for I can't even remember since the 60s. You think about it, they have been bad for 6 years, undisciplined, losing games in heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching fashion, and almost tried to do that Friday. I said, I don't know, you have great fan bases, Baylor, whoever, big schools, small schools, private schools, massive schools. But you have a fan base that has had a massive amount of commitment for 50, 60 years, even now during the last 5 or 6 years, and that's never going to change. And he said, I need to know that, and I think he'll learn that pretty damn quick here. In fact, what he's already learned today. It's a nice. Thanks for coming on, Coach Rhule.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate Matt Rhule for coming on with us and being the first radio interview and whatnot. The bit of time that he had. I mean, I think he made a very interesting little quote there about the whole conference affiliation thing.
Absolutely.
And if you want to play at noon on Fox and whatever, you come play in the Big Ten if you're from the state of Texas outside of playing for Texas and A&M. I mean, obviously Oklahoma's not going to stop recruiting Texas kids either. In fact, they probably need to get back to it a little bit, quite frankly. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting for teams in the state of Texas who are your TCUs, your Baylors, your Texas Techs, your whoever's, Houston now, especially being in the Big 12, to a lesser extent your SMUs. But for those those Big 12 type schools that are in the state of Texas, I mean, how are they going to fend that off? You know, I mean, for some guys, you're going to say, hey, yeah, the NIL money up in Lincoln, but it's also a plane ride and, you know, it's cold. And, I mean, there's going to be certain things that guys just want to stay closer to home no matter what. I mean, guys have been picking the University of Houston over Baylor or Texas or whatever despite the, you know, the drop-off. But, you know, that will still happen. But at the same time, this is an era of athlete empowerment and basically buying players in so many ways for a lot of the top prospects, that is, or bidding wars at the very least. And, you know, Nebraska's going to clearly be right in the thick of that. You know, all the Big Ten schools, SEC schools are going to be right in the thick of that. And how much can, you know, the Texas schools here and that are not a part of that party, how much can they fend that off and keep the talent in state? That's going to be quite the battle because teams are coming, and they're coming for the talent, and they always have, but to a different degree now because they're armed with the biggest checkbook they've ever had, and there's a bunch of them. I mean, even Indiana, like they'll never beat Baylor for a Texas. They can if they offer $3 million a year for this quarterback prospect.
All bets are off.
Yeah, I mean, so that's something that your Arandas and I mean, I know McGuire's got $25K per player, you know, the thing that they did this offseason. So there's things being done, but yeah, it's a fascinating new world we're stepping into is just kind of my point. And I know we've already been kind of leading ourselves in that direction and knew that was the direction it was headed, but you hear him say that, and that really hits home.
One of the things that he did say in his press conference, and Paul, you were able to monitor it with a couple of comments, so we don't need to use the audio we have from the press conference later in the show. I didn't expect him to get him on today. I really didn't. But thank goodness relationships with him has mattered, and it was great to have him on. He said while he was with Carolina about how he would look at players who were draft prospects and found how many of them were going to schools who were a part of the FCS and how many of those guys he wants to see if they can change some of those minds to get them to Lincoln, whether it's Power 5 or not, or Group of 5 or whatever it's called now, or not, or FCS. He saw that, and he says, we need to go find that talent and bring that when he starts to recruit. In fact, he's already done it.
More than you'd think. I mean,
clearly Cam Moore didn't belong at Incarnate Word. He belonged at Washington State. But, I mean, there's, you know, these
How about the guy who's now the star receiver with Green Bay?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Watson or whatever?
Yeah, Christian Watson.
I mean, there's a lot of guys out there you could point to. I mean, Aaron Jones, if you want to talk about Green Bay, didn't belong at UTEP probably. He probably could have played at a higher level, all due respect to the minors. I mean, there's thousands of instances of that. But I do think that now, you know, the fog of the last couple of years is starting to clear, and everybody's kind of resetting the deck chairs. And if you're Nebraska, you're in a really good spot. And, yeah, the transfer portal, in addition to the NIL portion of things that we've just touched on, the transfer portal part of things is also going to be a huge benefit to him. I'd imagine he's going to attack that thing with, you know, a ton of rigor and a ton of, you know, intelligence, and they're going to revamp that roster in a very short amount. He didn't have that when he was at Baylor. He didn't have the transfer portal. He didn't have NIL. That was only like 3 years ago he left, and it's already all brand new stuff. And that's what my question was getting at. I mean, just that alone, I'm sure had to be a huge draw for Nebraska, knowing that you're going to have plenty of ammunition behind you when it comes to attacking those types of things. So this isn't taking over Baylor and having to actually recruit the class and develop them and, you know, maybe get a transfer or two here and there who are immediate graduate eligible guys. This is like, you can go in the portal right now and go like revamp this sucker in, you know, no time. So you also got to fend off others, but yeah, it's going to be cool to watch him kind of build this thing up.
All right, we will come with Chad Brendel, who covers Cincinnati on the loss of Luke Fickell. He'll join us in the next segment. Ricky Thompson on Baylor, not so much looking back at 6-6. They need to like brush your teeth and clean that. But what are decisions coming up that he thinks he might need to see among many things? And there's a lot of debate. And probably some things have got, as usual, crossed the line when it comes to players. But when you're getting now in college football, and there's NIL money, not that Blake Shapen, we don't know if he's getting a nickel or what. But they're going to open up. You've got to open up that quarterback position. And then he also, J.J. Gill mentioned this, he's still truly just wrapping up truly after the number starts his freshman year. But you wonder about Kyron Jones. And, of course, you have Austin Novosad, who's still in the playoffs, him coming in as the transfer at the start of the spring semester. So some of those decisions from Ricky Thompson's perspective, who will give us some true serum on that. All right, coming up next, thanks to Matt Rhule, also thanks to Dirk Chatelain, on the Nebraska View. Wisconsin gets Luke Fickell, and he's being introduced right now in Madison. What are the thoughts in Cincinnati with Chad Brendel? We'll have that and more, and this is 365 Sports. So if you, in fact, have already done whatever you need, you had all the food you needed for Thanksgiving, whether you had turkey and ham, whether you had a prime rib, whatever you had, and hopefully you were able to get a lot of that, if not all of it, from Waco Custom Marketplace at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. Right now, they still continue to have specials, remember, not just with turkeys and hams, various sizes, various pounds, pitted or not pitted hams, but they have that going on all the way throughout the holidays and various specials on the various type of hams and turkeys. But on top of that, they have a butcher shop where you can get your cut of whatever steak you want. I love bone-in ribeye. Maybe you like the bacon wrap filet. They can do that for you. Maybe you want a prime rib for later on in the holidays. They have that for you. Order, pick it up. They'll do it. They have a bakery that's full-time as well with everything you'd want inside of a bakery, the treats and sweets and all of that. It's Waco Custom Marketplace at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year. It's football season. And BK Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football teams in Texas, right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, led by our leading rusher, the F-150, 45 years in a row. Lock in your best price and rate today by custom ordering your new F-150 at BK Ford. Simple, easy, trusted. Experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
Howdy, Chet Garner here, professional guide, searching for bears in the wild. But not just any bears, oh no, a particular kind. With hundreds of thousands roaming freely in the wild, yet still hard to spot unless you know the signs. There they are, Baylor bears. If you're a bear enthusiast or even a bear yourself, join me and let's find some bears in the wild.
Join the expedition at baylor.edu/alumni.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingham with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like First Free Checking, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
This is Sikkim 365 Radio. Text us at 254-339-1122. The Sikkim text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Our great friend Chad Brendel, BearcatJournal.com. We've had him on many times, especially when it started to get into all of what was happening with the Big 12 in the future, with Cincinnati joining, in fact, next summer. He joins us on 365 Sports, and this time in a different way. Luke Fickell now, Wisconsin, Cincinnati's on the clock. And Chad, what's been the reaction among Bearcat Nation?
A lot of panic initially, because this one was a surprise. It kind of came out of nowhere. The Wisconsin people all thought it was going to be Jim Leonhard, and it was something that you check on because it's a pretty big job. And I think even they were surprised. So that's why you didn't hear any rumblings or rumors to the like. And then all of a sudden you get the Pete Thamel tweet yesterday at about 11 a.m. and if Pete Thamel tweets it, like it's happening. Yeah. that's how that goes. So I think everybody is going through the stages of grief, and acceptance has kind of settled in, and now it's time to get on to the business of finding who's next.
Chad, what do you think? I mean, again, this is a Big 12 job now that they're hiring for, so that changes the pool probably considerably than it would have been previously. But what kind of coach do you think they are hiring? Do you want another Luke Fickell, somebody to keep that stream going, or what do you do?
Another Luke. I mean, I don't know what another Luke Fickell looks like. I guess an assistant from Ohio State, or is it somebody with Ohio ties? Is it a defense first guy? Do they look to maybe go more offense? It's interesting because there's a lot of different ways that you can define it. Is it a culture guy? Because that's ultimately like what it comes down to as what Luke Fickell was. This is going to be really interesting from John Cunningham because he's had one basketball hire. And he hired a coach with 10 years of experience that is moving up a level. But the runner-up was an assistant at Ohio State. So how much does he weigh experience, or how much does he look at an up-and-coming guy? I don't know. It can go a lot of different ways right now. And it's going to be interesting to see, like, as we get into the heart of this thing over the next 2 or 3 days, what names start to pop up.
Chad, when did this first get on your radar, and what was your initial reaction?
I mean, realistically, like I said, like all the Wisconsin people were of, anybody covering Wisconsin was of the full belief that Jim Leonhard was going to be their next head coach. So usually that's where the smoke starts coming from is the place that he's going to. So when you call and you check those sources and they say, we're pretty sure it's going to be Jim Leonhard, you don't get a lot of smoke that Luke Fickell's name was involved. So I commend them for, Luke and Nebraska or Wisconsin for doing a really good job of keeping this thing quiet, because really when the Thamel tweet came out, like, well, okay, but this is what we've been hearing all along. So this is a departure from that. So it takes you by surprise, kind of.
Had Cincinnati been in the championship game, had they won, would this not have happened this week, or is this going to happen no matter what?
I think it was going to happen no matter what. I mean, from what we're hearing now, Amy Fickell his wife went to Wisconsin to kind of scope out the city. Luke Fickell interviewed after the ECU game, like they played ECU on a Friday. He had his interview with Wisconsin on a Saturday. That doesn't point to something that, was exploratory, I guess is a good way to put it. That points to something that this is pretty far down the path. And So I don't know. We saw with Willie Fritz that Tulane gets into the American Athletic Conference championship game, and 2 days later he takes the Georgia Tech job. So I think it is. I think this was going to happen one way or another, whether they got into the championship game or not.
Chad, how much does the timing hurt more so given the fact of where they're heading next year? Or does it make that much of a difference that they're now heading into the Big 12, the timing of this happening?
Yeah. I think it reduces when you're looking at it, do you really want, like, one of the names that has really popped up has been Brian Hartline.
Yep.
He's the lead recruiter at Ohio State. He was the 2022 recruiter of the year on 24/7 Sports. But he just started coaching in 2018. He's only been a wide receiver coach, and this year he is the passing game coordinator. And so he hasn't been a coordinator. He's only been a coach for 4 years. That's a chance that you can much easier take in the American, right?
Right.
Because you're tying yourself to this coach for your first 3 or 4 years in the Big 12. And maybe it works, and maybe it's a grand slam, and everything goes swimmingly. But it is also, if you're looking at like a poker hand, the other guy's got aces, and you're trying to win with 7-9 offsuit, right? Your hands are tied there. That the margin for error is so wide that's part of what I think when I said, like, this is going to be really interesting to see where John Cunningham goes with this. Does he go with experience? Does he go with a hot coordinator? Does he go completely beyond that with a guy like Hartline that doesn't have coordinator experience? The ways that this can go are numerous, and we've got a new AD hiring his first football coach, so we don't have a lot of history to go off of.
Chad, how quickly do you think this will happen, given the timetable now? When you lose a coach like this, even gets more accelerated. It's not like you fired him and had time to think about this.
So the one data point that we do have is the basketball search that John Cunningham ran after John Branham was let go and the hire of Wes Miller. John Branham was fired on April 9th. The press conference to announce Wes Miller was on April 14th. So he has moved exceptionally fast in his one other hire. So I would expect, the transfer portal opens Monday, right? So I would think Friday, Saturday, Sunday, sometime this weekend, at worst, maybe a press conference a week from today on Monday. Like, you would think, because of trying to keep your roster intact, being ready for when the portal opens, so that, the way that this thing I think is going to happen, and I would guess you guys agree with me, most of these higher name guys going into the portal know where they're going when they get into the portal. So if you don't have a staff in place until, say, hypothetically, like December 7th or 8th or 9th, you're getting into the portal at a time when it's already been pretty picked over. And that, I've heard a lot of schools are going to be doing official visit weekends for the portal, the 8th, 9th, 10th, like that weekend. So if you don't have your staff in place until then, schools are already going to have hundreds of guys from the portal on their campuses. And that puts you behind the 8 ball. So I think it's going to have to be fast. I would guess that by Sunday, 6 days from now, I would guess we'll have an idea of who the coach is going to be.
Chad, obviously now everything's kind of, I would feel like, up in the air just due to change, but also the transfer portal and, the accessibility there and all that. But what's kind of your final read on Cincinnati? I know still a bowl game to play, but what's kind of your final read on this year's team? And even though the Fickell deal throws everything in upheaval, your sort of look at the future of sort of their base.
I think it was a reset. Like, it was kind of somewhere between reload and rebuild, right?
Okay. Yeah.
There were a lot of young guys that you had to get playing time just from the fact of you lost 9 guys to the NFL draft. Like, that's That's a lot of production and a lot of experience. So you had to cover yourself there. And then what people I think don't really pay attention to that they should have is that Cincinnati lost half of their coaching staff. They had to replace 5 assistants this offseason. So not only have you lost half of your on-field talent that got you to the CFP, you've also lost half of your staff. And then the year before that, they lost Marcus Freeman, and we see where he's at now. So I think there was just a lot of new faces, new places. They still, this thing could have gone horribly wrong with what they were replacing. They still went 9-3 and played on the final day of the season to host the AAC title game. So I think it was a success, and I think you had a lot of guys that are going to be the core of your program on the field. But it looked a lot like 2018 when they won 10. The first year Fickell had success, where they won double-digit games, but they got blown out at Ohio State, and they weren't good enough. They got blown out at UCF. So they just weren't quite there yet. This team had a feeling of, we're pretty good and we're going to get a lot of wins, but we're not a championship level team yet. And that's okay. You're not going to be a championship level team every year. But they were close. I mean, 3 losses, Arkansas, UCF, Tulane, all ranked at the time. They lost by a grand total of 14 points. So I think you feel pretty good if the new coach can keep things mostly, intact as they are.
Isn't it just, you think about it in this day and age of the topsy-turvy, changing wins of college football. In a matter of a year, Cincinnati went from one of the highest highs of making the college football playoff, and what an incredible run, to a year later their coach is gone. And then next year they're going to be in the Big 12. It's just, things are going at such a rapid speed.
Yeah.
And I know it had to have been just a gut punch to Cincinnati, because of what I read some columns from Wisconsin writers, that this came not out of nowhere, but this was not on the radar, as even you mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, the people that cover Wisconsin had no idea. They were scrambling. My phone was blowing up going, hey, what's Luke Fickell? And I'm like, you tell me, you cover Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a tough blow. But look, I will tell you guys this. Cincinnati's been through a lot of this before. They lost Mark D'Antonio and hired Brian Kelly. They lost Brian Kelly, hired Butch Jones. They lost Butch Jones and hired a terrible senator from Alabama. But then they got Luke Fickell. Their batting average is pretty good. I'll take 4 for 5.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of success. That success has led to a lot of turnover, and that turnover has led to still a lot of good coaches coaching in Cincinnati. You're doing pretty good when your coaches have left for Michigan State, Notre Dame, Tennessee, and now Wisconsin.
And the U.S. Senate.
And the U.S. Senate, but he didn't leave on his own. But I just think it speaks highly of this university, this program's ability to bounce back, to take a hit, and to keep on moving. They very easily could have been USF. The USF, when the Big East fell apart, that was a program that at one time was number 2 in the nation. And now their program is dying on the vine. So Cincinnati will be resilient. It might take a little bit longer now than expected to get up into speed in the Big 12. But if they get the hire right, they'll get there.
How's your wife? How's Kelly?
Doing great. She's getting ready for a second stem cell transplant here at the end of the month. So that's going to be a challenge, but spirits are up and she's looking great. And we're doing really well, all things considered. We're fighting as always.
Well, we're thinking about you guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time, Chad. Great stuff.
Appreciate you, gentlemen. We'll talk soon.
Chad Brendel covers Cincinnati Bearcat Journal. Think about the turnaround. And you're right. They've talked about getting up off the canvas with losing coaches. And now they have to replace a guy in Luke Fickell, who had been wanted by many people last year and just wasn't ready. And now you have this big, huge, massive university, Wisconsin, Big Ten, and the fit was there. Have you guys seen the transfer portal today?
Yeah, it's going pretty crazy.
I don't even think I can we'll try to do that. Ricky Thompson, former Baylor receiver, will join us in the next segment. In fact, we'll do that next. Also, I'm going to leave this with Craig about the Ohio State-Michigan game, and the numbers were beyond anything ever, at least in a long, long time. We'll have that for Off the Radar tomorrow.
I mean, yeah, I'll do the ratings tomorrow. What was the number this year, though? I know it was a huge – I mean, you just say the Ohio State-Michigan.
17 million.
Yeah, I mean, massive number. I think I said in the Thursday – or what was that? I guess it would have been Tuesday. I said, that was what was expected. I mean, I kind of played up. Not that was some genius prediction. Everybody knew they were going to have a huge number. But I said when looking at last week's ratings that – yeah, get ready. That Ohio State-Michigan number, that's going to be crazy with them both in contention and both fighting for, divisional title and a spot in the conference championship game and just all that comes with that. And sure enough, it delivered. No surprise there. And that is, what you're banking on is those big matchups if you're the Big Ten. When you go and add who you added. Same thing with the SEC is you're trying to get those TV numbers, and certainly, your old traditional one's going to get it too. But I think, you're seeing the kind of them throw their weight around TV ratings wise, and that's what Fox signed up for. Big weekend for Fox. We can get to that more tomorrow.
Yep. All right, when we come back, Ricky Thompson, what are decisions Baylor and head coach Dave Aranda need to make? His thoughts about it looking forward after losing and getting beaten up in the fourth quarter by Texas to finish 6-6, the bowl game, wherever and whoever that will be against. This is 365 Sports. IdealMRI.com in the Central Texas marketplace, just off the southern part of Waco, off of I-35, in the Central Texas marketplace, right there on Highway 6 in the, the access road. What can they do? Two things. Find out what may hurt you, or not may, whatever is hurting you. Shoulder, knee, maybe something that in your abdomen, there's a pain that it keeps you up at night that doesn't allow you to focus, and it's bothering you. Maybe a muscle, a ligament that's torn or shredded, or maybe something that is inside of you that doesn't need to be there, or something that's missing. The MRI at Ideal MRI, they'll find it or find out what is wrong. And they also will do a second thing, save you tons of money. An average MRI is $1,100, which means some are higher, and theirs will never be higher than $497, and sometimes it is less. They will help you. Dr. Rob Maxey and his partners are incredible. The specialists, the techs, the machines, state-of-the-art technology. I've been in it 3 or 4 times, and they are fantastic. The staff, the money saving, and finding out what is the problem at IdealMRI.com.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Boots add protection. Good boots help you climb better and move forward faster. And when your son or daughter steps into the boots of a U.S. Army officer, they also learn how to lead. In these boots, they'll gain more confidence with expert training in one of more than 150 occupational specialties. In these boots, they'll stand a little taller and lead a team with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise to successfully accomplish whatever challenge comes next. In these boots, they'll earn respect with valuable experience from day one that will give them solid footing for success into the future. Highly qualified candidates who earn a spot on our team can receive comprehensive health care coverage, college tuition assistance, and a bonus of up to $40,000. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
Bijan Robinson back in the backfield. 3rd and goal. Lining up out of the eye. Bijan, touchdown Horns.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Ricky Thompson, Baylor sideline reporter for Baylor Radio, former Baylor wide receiver with us on 365 Sports. Ricky, 6-6, no matter what. You know, Bill Parcells, he's not the only one. You are who your record says you are, and I think probably after this year, that probably is exactly who they are. Your thoughts, first of all, how quickly can you wash a season? I know there's a bowl game, but how quickly do you think Dave Aranda and staff are jumping into what the heck they're going to do in the offseason and what decisions they have to make?
Smokey, I bet they've already done that. I think they're probably in the middle of that right now. I think we know transfer portal date is December 5th, something like that. Mm-hmm. So I think they'll be active in all regards. I'm sure they're working really hard to keep this signing class intact. I think it's one of the better ones in the history of Baylor football if they can hold on to it, which I think they probably will. But I think you're already working on next year. I know you've got a bowl game, and I know they want to win that. And we'll speak to that. I think the win in that bowl game is pretty critical. I think you do that, you're 7-6. I think you can remember winning a Texas Bowl some years ago that we finished 7-6 off of, came back and went 11-3 the next year. So while the bowl game is a month away and some think it may not be as big a bowl as we were hoping for, which it's not, I still think it's important to go win that thing. But I think next year is already underway.
Ricky, do you think they need to open up the quarterback competition in the spring?
I kind of expected they probably will, or probably would have anyway. I think so. I think that's good. I think it's good for Blake. I think it's good for all the other quarterbacks that will be there. I'm not sure. I think Novosad is supposedly going to come in the spring. I'm not sure. I think that's right. And if he is, you'll have 3 or 4 guys out there that will be competing, and I think that's good. I think it's good for everybody. Blake's played, 12, 13 games, so he's far from an experienced guy, and I think everybody knows we need some improvement back there, and it may just be him. But I think it'll be competitive in the spring in any regard.
So, Ricky, going back to Friday, they jump out to the 9-0 lead with the safety and the touchdown, and then Texas comes storming back, and it's 14-9. Then Baylor grabs the lead by halftime, and then just the second half really got away from them. The fourth quarter, in particular, really got away from them. What was the story of Saturday's loss to you, or Friday's loss to you?
Well, a couple things. I think number one, I think that we were pretty ineffective on offense in the second half. And number two, Texas finally decided Quentin Ewers is not going to do this today, and Bijan Robinson is. And we're going to run the football, and we're going to run it, and then we're going to run it again. And I think that's where the game changed. I think they took control offensively with their line and Bijan Robinson. I mean, how many times have we said in the past couple of years that when we can take control like that up front and run the football, we're going to win? You went 12-2 last year doing that. So I think that was the difference in the game. That guy's a stud. He's really good. He's a good guy. I hope he makes a bucket load of money, and I hope he leaves this year.
Yeah, you and 11 other, now is it going to be what, 13 other schools, I think, because of the new that's being added in the next year. How much, in your opinion, and the word could either be underachieved at times. It looked like they were kind of who they were last year, but that was an elite defense. How much were you disappointed the defense never seemed to be able to really become disruptive and create havoc in the defensive line that had so many people back, didn't dominate more than they did?
Well, I think we all are. And I think part of that's a reflection of the guys that were behind them and the inexperience back there and the fear of bringing those guys like they did last year. And I'll go back the same. I mean, guys, think about what you lost. You lost Jalen Petrie, which is one of the best that's ever played back there. Terrell Bernard, who I watched in the Sugar Bowl completely blow up an offensive guard to go get a sack. You had J.T. Woods at safety, who ran, 4.29. You lost a lot of guys back there that were skilled type guys that took a lot of the pressure off that defensive front and just let them play. And I think that was a completely different scenario this year. And I don't think, sure, they weren't as good as what we were hoping or thought they might be, but I think there's some reasonably obvious reasons that they weren't. Now, where they go next year, I don't know. You lose a lot of those guys up front, and we'll see if these younger guys step in.
Ricky, the team, I was watching the Michigan game the other day, and J.J. McCarthy willed himself into the end zone on a touchdown. They willed themselves to stops when Ohio State looked like they were maybe trying to get back in it. Why did Baylor not have that gene this year?
I don't think that's one that I can answer. Obviously, we didn't. There were several occasions when we're one play away. Brigham Young, you're one play away. TCU, you're one play away. West Virginia, you're one play away. You win those ball games, you're 9-3. So I don't know what that was, but you're really very, very close to a 9-3, 10-2 football team. Yet you're 6-6 because you didn't make those plays, and that's the difference between winning and losing. And I think you can even go back to some third downs when we had drop balls. I mean, those kind of plays. I promise you, TCU made the bulk of those plays this year. You guys saw that game. They weren't that much better than us, if any, on that day. But during the year to go 12-0, they made those third down plays. They made the third down stops. And a lot of that is just will to get it done and the will to win. And a lot of that comes from on-field leadership. And I just think we lost a ton of it last year.
Yeah, some of those games, and this is, again, the quarterback gets a lot of the adulation and also some of the blame, but there was a series against TCU, the next to the last series, on a third down run where Blake slid a couple of yards short, and we can talk about Ben Sims opened or not, but all that, but it just seemed like that little extra oomph at times just wasn't there, and it wasn't just the quarterback position.
Pick against Texas down 4 points.
Yeah.
I mean, there in the second half, and then Texas goes down and scores, and the game's over. Basically, I mean, I think that was probably the frustrating part was just the timeliness of some of those turnovers. How much of that is just Blake getting adjusted to playing, do you think, Ricky? And how much of that at this point is like, okay, that's not a problem that needs to be occurring week after week, these interceptions?
Well, it's not, and I think you go into next season with that attitude if Blake's playing. I think that's unacceptable. In the second year you're back there, you can't have that. There were too many plays back there that we left on the table, and you can't do that. Now, I'm in no way putting all this on Blake Shapen because it's not. The kid played his guts out and made some incredible throws. The throw he made to Ben Sims at the end of the first half Friday was a great throw. Sims was open, but he had to zip that thing in there between coverages. And I thought it was one of the better throws he's made. It was just a really good throw. And I just think that as he grows, the longer you play back there, the more that's expected of you and the fewer mistakes you can make. And I think if he's the guy next year, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's not, that he can't make those plays, and then he's got to make the ones that he did, just like sliding. It's okay to slide, and there are times to slide, and believe me, and on most occasions you want that. But on 3rd and 3, when you're at 2 yards, you got to just tuck it, lower your shoulder, and go. And if you happen to get dinged, you get dinged. But, I'd say 7 out of 10 times you probably do slide. But there are those 2 or 3 where you just can't. You got to get it. You got to get the first down, and the first down's the difference in winning and losing.
Do you think now, based on who Baylor was, that the quarterback decision to go with Shapen, who seemed like the right choice at the time, was that the right choice over Gary Bohannon?
I think so. I do think it was. I just think we watched Gary last year really hesitant to sling the ball over the middle 2 or 3 times, really had critical interceptions, one in the end zone. I know Blake had one there too, but I just think with what the ability to throw the ball and the change there was appropriate as far as pure quarterback. Now, the one thing that Gary added that we didn't have was the quarterback running the football and just flat power zone with the quarterback running the ball, and you lost that because Blake, with his size, just that's not a kid you wanted to run that play. But I do. I think it was the right decision.
Ricky, thank you. Ought to be an interesting offseason, not only with what they do, and we'll see what happens with either some staff who get opportunities elsewhere or what Dave Aranda might do, if anything, as they move on from 6-6, a bowl game coming up. What are your thoughts about Matt Rhule to Nebraska?
Surprised me a little bit. I think I don't know if that's in his wheelhouse or not. Of course, probably being in Texas wasn't necessarily it either. But I do think he fits the college game more so than the NFL, and that's an opportunity. But I'll say this. I would be shocked if he doesn't add a couple of Texas high school guys or Texas-related coaches to that staff, because Nebraska completely lost their ability to recruit in Texas when they went to the Big Ten. And I think he's smart enough with his connection with Texas coaches that somewhere in there, Smokey, we're going to see something Texas-related on that staff.
We had him on live, and he jumped on with us, which was during a really busy, hectic afternoon. And I asked him about Texas. We all did. And he mentioned that they have to be here all over, not just like in Dallas or Houston. They're going to be all over. They'll have coaches that know those areas. And so you're exactly right. Who it might be or how many it might be, not sure. Evan Cooper's going to be a part of it. We know that, and he understands it because he was here when he helped build up the early parts of Baylor. Now, whether or not he can find another guy like a Sean Bell or a David Wetzel or even a Joey McGuire in that mix, that remains to be seen, but I bet they give it a shot.
I bet they do, too.
Thank you, Ricky. Appreciate your time. We'll see you during the bowl week.
Thanks, guys.
Ricky Thompson,
you bet.
Former Baylor wide receiver, Baylor radio sideline reporter on a lot of the questions that Baylor has and faces after kind of, you know what, hitting the skids with 3 losses in a row. Kansas State, TCU, and also with Texas.
It's a disappointing. I mean, just call it what it is. Disappointing year. I mean, I understand everybody had different opinions on where they should have finished. Based off of what they lost last year and what they brought back, and just what they accomplished last year. I do think everybody probably got too much into drinking the green Aranda Kool-Aid, and just expecting him to magically be able to make up for losing the likes of Jalen Petrie and those guys. But I mean, at the same time, were people, that far off? I mean, yeah, they were 6-6, but is it really that hard to draw them to a 9-win season? Like you flip 3 plays maybe?
No.
Like 3 plays flip and they're 9 wins instead of 6 wins, and that's just kind of how it went. And you could have said the same thing about last year. Those things worked in their favor. This year they didn't. I do think, though, that the lack of identity is what is most alarming. I don't know who they're supposed to be now. Like, yeah, good defense, but they're not really a good defense. Offensively, run the football when you can, but couldn't really do that for, a large portion of their games. I mean, there were some games they were highly effective, and then injuries came into play too. I know that, but they're not somebody that's just going to line it up and run it down your throat. Barely over 100 yards against Texas. Now, Texas is a really good defense, so maybe you chalk it up to that. But I don't feel like they ever just imposed their will time and again like they were able to last year, despite having the offensive line back. And I know they lost Abram Smith, so that plays into it. So there are reasons why certain things weren't as good as they should have been. And bottom line, I think it just boils down to they just didn't have the killer instinct, and they just didn't have the ability to finish that the other team had the year prior, due to having so many veterans, due to having so many NFL talents, due to having whatever you want to point to. And as a result, they're 6-6 rather than 9-3.
And look, you can look all around the country and see teams that developed a killer instinct. Look, Michigan didn't have it for a long time. Now all of a sudden they're one of the best teams in the country. Baylor had it and lost it, but sometimes going through what they did, you can go back and go, okay, well, that's why, we need to, dive in that situation. And, when it's imperative that it's 3rd and 6 and you get a stop, you don't give up 8 yards. Like you get that stop. Like that, those things where just one play right now in the close games, the team last year knew it.
Okay, but let's look at the 6-6. How many of the 6 wins, one play could have been a loss?
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Like Oklahoma, maybe. Yeah. I'd have to go back to their schedule. I mean, not the first couple, because those were blowout wins. Let's see here.
Not Tech. They blew Tech out.
Yeah.
Best game of the year for them was
they beat Kansas by 12, so I guess maybe technically if something goes, Iowa State was a close game. I mean, that's their wins right there. Yeah. So, I mean, Oklahoma for sure, and then Iowa State, which was everybody versus Iowa State except for TCU just this past Saturday. So that was kind of the story no matter who was playing the Cyclones. But, yeah, I mean, I feel like the only game
Unless it was TCU.
That's what I just said.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I feel like the only 2 games they lost this year that they just lost were they got destroyed by K-State, obviously. Yep. And I feel like Oklahoma State was pretty much just a dominant, not like a super dominant win, but Oklahoma State controlled that game. Mm-hmm. They controlled that game. Spencer Sanders was healthy. It wasn't the Oklahoma State of right now. That was early in the season. But the other, 4, West Virginia, that was just that game. That was, that was an awful loss. BYU was a 6-point loss on the road, week 2 in Provo, late night. I mean, that was all that dressing. 1 point to TCU, had no business losing that game. And then in Texas, I mean, you had an opportunity in the fourth quarter. You had the big scoop and score fumble to start the fourth quarter, gave you the lead back, and then you proceeded to get ran on 20-plus times and a 14-0 run. And the opportunity you did have, Blake Shapen throws an interception. That was their fourth quarter. Was starting it off with a scoop and score to take the lead, and they did nothing after that.
Which usually, if you're a road team and you get a play like that happens, it usually flips the momentum and the script, and you feed off of that. And you're right. After that, it was it.
Yeah,
that was like, oh my God, they might win this game in Austin.
So I think next year's going to be a really fascinating offseason. Certainly a huge departure from last year. I know a lot of people wonder, like, who really is Dave Aranda? After year 1, you had the COVID 2-7. and then the Big 12 championship run in 12-2, and now this year 6-6, and then whatever happens in the bowl game. I still think he's way more of the Big 12 championship coach than he is anything the other direction. But I do think there are a lot of things that need to be figured out and figured out about why the season went exactly the way that it did, and where they need to improve and how they need to improve. But I'm confident that he's already at work on that. I'm not, suddenly like, oh, he's on the hot, nothing like that. I know people are crazy online, but I'm nowhere near there. I still have a lot of confidence in Dave Aranda. I just think they caused some bad breaks, and they didn't have quite the leadership that they had last year. And now I think next year will be a really telling season. So start the countdown.
All right. Again, if you have not heard, Luke Fickell is wrapping up, I guess, his press conference in Wisconsin. Matt Rhule had his earlier. Coach Rhule joined us on 365 Sports. And a couple of Baylor-related notes. Corey Campbell, who's been with Carolina as the assistant strength and conditioning coach, was at Baylor. He will join Matt Rhule's staff. Evan Cooper, Baylor, Carolina, even before that, Temple. He will join Coach Rhule's staff. And then there's been the report about Paul, who am I talking about? Satterfield, who's been the offensive coordinator at Red Hot, South Carolina, will be the offensive coordinator. That's been a report as well. He mentioned Terrence Knighton, who's been a part of Carolina's staff, as someone who will join him. He did that. He said that in Lincoln. So all of that is going on today. A lot going on. When we come back, I want to get into the transfer portal because it has gone nuts. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say a couple of things I wanted to add to that. Y'all seen Matt Rhule's contract?
Yes.
$12 million by the end of it. 12 plus.
Who's his agent? Is it Sexton?
No, he's Trace Armstrong.
Okay, That's right. Yeah, he's a Trace guy. That's right. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of Jimmy Sexton mentions because of all the Hugh Freeze thing going on right now. But, yeah, I mean, he's got a killer deal at Nebraska. We'll say that. Like, the buyout is ridiculous. If they choose to, try and exit out of this thing early on in the contract, I forget the exact numbers, but he's going to walk away with a boatload of money.
Well, here it is right here on the numbers. $6.5 million this year. $5.5 million for through 2023, 6.5, 7.5, 8.5, 10, 11.5, 12, 12.5 million. I haven't gotten to the buyout deals. You saw that. I didn't see that.
Yeah, so it would make it double digits in the next few years. I mean, that's also part of, the new landscape and how much of a disparity is there between the coaches in the SEC and the Big Ten and how much the guys in the Big 12 are making, right? If 10's suddenly the average in the Big Ten, because soon it will be. Yeah, it will soon be the average, not the highest paid guy.
Yep.
Then how do you keep up with that if you're able to keep up with it at all? And also saw Hugh Freeze looks like he's going to be making. And I really don't like talking about him that much, but 6 years, average of $6.5 million per year. So that's what he'll be getting from Auburn. That'll be interesting to see how that compares across the board.
That's pretty good money, but you wonder if there's had to be a little give and take there for him, the opportunity to regroup and have a job at Auburn. Mitch Sherman, who covers Nebraska, the buyout for Rhule, if they cut ties with him after 3 years, the buyout is $41 million.
That's what I was
thinking. If fired after 4 years, it's $32 million. And then, of course, there is still money, not all of it, because that was part of the deal with Carolina. It was $840,000 a month for 4 years. Some of that offset. A lot of it will be offset because of the new contract. And in a clause in that contract with the buyout to Carolina, what they owed him was that he had to show that he was truly looking for other employment. And that's in some of the other contracts, so they don't just get stuck with that. So even though he was getting that, and it was going to be a matter, like he said, the day he was fired, he got a call from somebody, a search firm, about a university. All right, let's come in and update the transfer portal. Players everywhere, from coaches who have been fired programs to others who are looking for new opportunities. We'll get to that and more. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Man, I tell you what, November is almost done. It's crazy how fast the month of November has flown by. And so they have what they have right now. They had the Black Friday sales event, of course, and much more going on with that. And then whatever time of the year it is, there's going to be dealer discounts, there's going to be opportunities, there's going to be the APR financing, which is great, sometimes even 0% financing. But you got to ask them when you're there. But here's also what they have: cars, vehicles, trucks, SUVs. They have pre-owned cars as well, which are hard to find. In fact, I found mine at Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram. AJ was my person I dealt with when it came to the transaction and looking around for a car. Their service department is fantastic. I'm supposed to go by there sometime this week and get my oil changed and checked and also the tires rotated as well. So it's not just the vehicles on the lot, it's also in the guts of that entire department and also that dealership. Ted Teague, the general manager, incredibly helpful when it comes to supporting local ideas and also businesses. Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Genco's Black Friday Cyber Monday Auto Loan Special is here. Apply for your auto loan online and receive a 0.15% loan discount. Plus, every auto loan gets 90 days with no payments. Then have a chance to win 90 more days with no payments. Black Friday Cyber Monday only at Genco. This special runs till December 2nd. Every online application gets an additional discount plus 90 days no payments. Only at Genco. Subject to credit approval, membership eligibility, and loan policies. For more information, go to gencofcu.org, member NCUA.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injuries, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Hi, this is Paul Catalina. I recently got engaged to the love of my life, but the most important thing that I had to do before I popped the question was get that perfect ring. And I know nothing about rings. So I went to the wedding ring store, Boozer's Jewelers on Valley Mills Drive. I knew I needed a custom design, and that's exactly what they do. 9 out of 10 of their engagement rings are designed in-house. The entire process took less than a month, and they were great every step of the way. Great options on financing, excellent selection, and talented designers. My fiance and I get nonstop compliments on the ring. I only deserve credit for doing the smartest thing I could, walking into Boozer's and letting them work their magic. Your one-of-a-kind fiance deserves a one-of-a-kind ring, and that's what you get at Boozer's. Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store on Valley Mills Drive.
Did you know Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco is open to the public? Next time you're in town for a Baylor athletic event or you're in town for tourism, take advantage of their day passes for $10 a piece or the weekend for $30. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers 40 group exercise classes, including indoor cycling and yoga, boot camp, and bar. New free weights, weight machines, TRX rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new elliptical machines, and a spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alec Botch, where you will be encouraged to grow. Sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, kids club, 16 tennis courts and 8 pickleball courts, and youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons available. Waco's premier experience where you can help your mind, body, and soul. Visit wacotennis.com or visit them next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Are you a Sikkim 365 super fan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
All right, I'm going to mention some of the players who have entered the transfer portal, and Craig and Paul can kind of react to them because they would know a lot more about some of these players than even I would, although there's some names. For example, Davis Brin from Tulsa has entered the transfer portal. Quarterback there, Philip Montgomery fired. The quarterback wants to look elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, you said his coach got fired. So, I mean, Davis Brin's a nice player. When he was healthy, he certainly made a difference for Tulsa, although didn't have him there to close out the year and still walked away with a big win. So Phil Montgomery, I feel like who's going to do a better job than he did ultimately? I know it's kind of year after year after year of, kind of middle of the road, I guess, sort of results with a couple of high points in there. But I think that he did about as good a job as most people are going to do in Tulsa. So I'm curious to know sort of what their expectations are. If it was simply like, hey, we just feel like this has ran its course and we've done this and we've given him 2-3 extra years, then I totally understand that. But yeah, Davis Brin's a nice quarterback, and I don't think he's going to be somebody that's flashing on the radars of like some massive program, like a big step up necessarily. But I don't know how he'll be gauged. He was solid though.
Michigan quarterback Cade McNamara, we just saw Michigan's star quarterback with what he did on Saturday. He now knows the future. He has entered the transfer portal.
Which I should say as well about Tulsa is that Houston also limping into the Big 12 next year with the way this season has gone for them and losing to Tulsa in the finale. But, Cincinnati not alone in that regard. BYU also firing their defensive coordinator. They're also making a change there. UCF were, I guess, really the only one untouched sort of as far as
well, they got already a game this week, yeah.
Well, I'm just saying there's already a DC's out, a head coach's or not a head coach's fired. We're talking about Tulsa there. But Dana Holgerson's already on a hot seat shortly into his tenure. Yeah, it's going to be interesting that DC's out and Provo, as I mentioned, sorry.
All right.
Yeah. But Cade McNamara, I think, can help somebody. He's got to be, again, he's probably got a good situation where he can step in and be a leader on the team. He's not spectacular, but he's a good player.
Sims, the quarterback at Georgia Tech, has entered the transfer portal.
Yeah, he was a 4-star prospect coming out and was actually committed to Florida State for a really long time, and then they fired Willie Taggart, and he changed his mind. I think
who got fired again this weekend?
Yeah, got fired again this weekend at FAU. I think that if Jeff Sims, from what I've seen of him, and look, his career is 30 touchdown passes, 23 interceptions, and that's not a great stat line. But he's really athletically gifted. If he went to the right coach, he could have a Bo Nix type situation. I'm not talking that, but he could grow and really help somebody, I think.
Yeah, you got to stay healthy. That's his biggest thing from this year. But yeah, he'll definitely be somebody that some teams look into.
Old Dominion running back Blake Watson had 2,400 total yards, 16 touchdowns the past couple of years in the Sun Belt Conference. Running back from Old Dominion has entered the portal. Those are the guys that really, this year we saw some of that happen, and you could see where they could compete no matter what the level, now that you get a little idea who they are.
Yeah, I think, he's got a shot to go up into the Power 5, and I bet you his offers will be pretty nice, considering that stat line of 2,400 yards in 2 years.
Caleb Schaefer, offensive lineman, Miami of Ohio. Here, Max Olson, hard to find experienced offensive lineman. 35 starts for Miami of Ohio has entered the transfer portal. Luke Altmaier, we saw him in the bowl game, enters the transfer portal at Ole Miss.
I mean, no surprise there. They had every opportunity to play him, and they've decided that he's not their guy, clearly. Yeah. So, that's not a surprise.
Jackson Dart played really well.
Yeah.
Here's a guy that I know he played for a team, and Spavital got fired. But Hatcher, the quarterback at Texas State, has entered the grad transfer portal. As a grad transfer.
Yeah, he was
pretty good player.
Yeah, he was also previously at Arkansas State and played there for a while, and then went to Texas State. I mean, he's a fine player. He's a good player. I don't think he's going to be a big shockwave type of addition for anybody, but he's a solid enough guy.
Malik Hornsby, Arkansas, quarterback. A lot of quarterbacks. What you look for, though, if you can land the gold with one of them, and some teams did this year. To me, the meat and the potatoes are the linemen and those type of players, and there's just not many of them available.
This is what everybody forgets with the whole transfer portal thing, or I'd say everybody forgets, but a lot of people forget in the whole conversation about the transfer portal is like, oh, yeah, we should go to the transfer portal. We need to get some offensive linemen. We need to get a couple of receivers. We need to get a tight end. Okay.
It's not 7-Eleven.
So does everybody else. Like a bunch of other teams need all of those things too, and if not more. And so, I need a running back. Well, 15 other schools in 500 miles from here also need a running back, and they probably like the same guy. So, I mean, you can need what you need. Yeah, at the grocery store, like, I need a certain kind of noodles, but they don't have them. They don't have them. Like, or if somebody in front of me grabs them first, they grab. You know what I mean? Like, that's out of your control. So you can't just think that the transfer portal is going to cure what ails you, because you have to probably outbid somebody for the top talent. And then the other talent, you're still fending off people left and right. And at any moment, somebody could swoop in and say, here's $1 million from Ohio State or whoever. So, yeah, that's a nice thing to have. But I think that's why you still have to be able to recruit. Even if there's the risk now, those guys getting poached and all that, you still got to be able to recruit deep down to fill some spots, because you can't just think the transfer portal is going to be, like Paul said, like 7-Eleven, where everything's available. That I'm going to go get a receiver here, get two O-linemen off this shelf. Like, you wish it was that easy, but it's not.
Cy-Fair's, LJ, are you going to add something to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. And the other thing is now, I think year one of getting Cam Wards and Jared Verses and guys like that, some schools, like, they can sneak under the radar, right? Cam Ward went with his offensive coordinator, or his head coach that became the offensive coordinator at Wazoo. That's probably – Matt Rhule's talking about it at a press conference today. That's over now. If you're an FCS guy who puts his name in the portal and you've got the stats of like a Cam Ward or a Jared Verse, you're going to get more than 2 calls like those guys did. The reason they wound up in the place that they did is most coaches were like, well, he's at Albany. Who gives a crap about him? But now they're
and then
like,
he went to Florida State and was maybe the biggest play of the year for them, man. One of the biggest.
Yeah.
LJ Johnson, running back, former highly ranked running back, had offers from everywhere. Came down to, I think, A&M in Texas. He's entered the transfer portal, didn't get many carries. Other than Devin H.A., nobody else did, who had a monster game against LSU. So he's entered the transfer portal from Texas A&M, and he's not the only one.
Yeah, him and a bunch of his teammates. Yeah. I wonder how much that win over LSU stems some of that off, but I feel like that was already kind of there.
I've actually been surprised, like, not at the number. I think the numbers about what it's a little less than I thought. I thought it might be a big, and it still could grow.
Still be, yeah.
Still could grow, but there have been several guys that have come right out and said they're coming back to A&M, which I was
Could Saturday at least calm the storm a little bit?
Well, I mean, look, and they fired the offensive coordinator this morning, so if you're an offensive player, you think that that's going to change, and especially if you're one of those quarterbacks. I mean, I would think Max Johnson's probably going to stay, but, and Connor Wigman's the starter going forward, but Haynes King, I mean, what does he do?
Are the checks still cashable?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, can we be real about the situation? Where are you going?
Yeah.
Are you going to take a pay cut to go play somewhere else? I mean, look, I understand some guys can afford to say, we'll get back into the talent pool and we'll get even more money or whatever, but I mean, let's be real about it. Those guys aren't under ironclad contracts by any means, but I don't think they're all looking to jump off the money ship by any stretch, at least for the guys who were – a part of that. And I think certainly some of those who are entering the transfer portal are. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be made out to be bad, and it was certainly a bad season overall, but I do think they saved some face with that win over LSU, and I do think the checks are still coming in probably. So as long as that's going on, I think that you've got a stronger than no chance to keep a lot of the remaining guys, but we'll see.
All right. Do you have the Broyles Award graphic, Garrett? The Broyles Award had their semifinalist a week or so ago. And again, the award show is coming up the first week, not this week, but sometime next week in December after the conference championship games. Not a surprise, Todd Monken, Georgia, Ryan Walters from Illinois, Jesse Minter, Michigan, Garrett Riley, done an incredible job with Max Duggan and TCU's offense, and then Alex Golish of Tennessee. Those are the 5 finalists for the Broyles Award. Last year, Jeff Grimes of Baylor was a finalist, and those are the 5 finalists. They'll announce it up. I think that's up in Fayetteville.
Yeah, Garrett, speaking of
Little Rock.
A&M and Garrett Riley, if you ask A&M fans like who they want to be their offensive coordinator and give them a top 10 list, he's 10 of the spots. He's all 10.
Is he really?
That's what, like, if you listen to their fan, it's Garrett Riley. Got to go get Garrett Riley. Look, working for Sonny Dykes, to me, seems to be a hell of a lot more fun than it would be working for Jimbo Fisher right now.
Yeah, and one seems to be more on the pulse of what offenses still do as well, and you see the success. Yeah, I think Joseph Gillespie could have been up for that award as well from TCU, the defensive coordinator, absolutely. If not probably deserving of more attention than I get why Riley gets it, but Sonny Dykes is an offensive coach after all, and I think the TCU defense not falling off a cliff after Gary Patterson left is a pretty big deal. I mean, and they've kind of been the ones to sort of bow up their necks here down the stretch run. So, yeah, I mean, TCU's getting a lot of love, and deservedly so, and Garrett Riley's certainly deserving of it. And, yeah, I imagine we're going to see a whole bunch of articles, discussing or linking or debating the chances of A&M landing somebody like him. But Jimbo's got to make some calls. I mean, that's for sure. And then, yeah, TCU on the other side of things, they're going to have to probably fend off some folks that like what they're doing and like what they've got going on and want to try to take some of that. So that's just part of the deal, part of the cycle in the business.
By the way, Spot Rack, who follows a lot of the contracts, we were talking about Matt Rhule's deal. Carolina owed him $40 million or so, $840,000 a month for 4 years. According to this one now, they now owe him only $12 million because of the new contract that he got with Nebraska. So it didn't wipe out all of what they owe him, but that does change it quite a bit because of the offsetting salaries that he gets to coach in Nebraska. All right, Garrett, do you have the Kevin Warren quotes? Now, I hope these look okay because I know they were pretty long. So after the game that night, and this is his job, just like it's the job of the Pat Kliavkoff to help do whatever he can with his conference when it comes to their future and whatever. So he was asked about if Ohio State should be a part of the college football playoff, even fresh off getting busted up in the second half by Michigan. One quote. It was an instant classic.
Not to people in Columbus.
Yeah, for real. I mean,
that's I'm pretty sure that they would rather watch their colonoscopy videos in that second half.
Yeah,
it was not an instant classic. It was for Michigan football forever. It should be, but not. It was
not a classic.
I watched the game because I was sitting there going, damn, Michigan is beating up the bully. Look, and they've become the bully.
South Carolina Clemson is a classic. I mean, especially for South Carolina. It's not for Clemson, but it was 31-30. It was, it came down to the wire. South Carolina
beat TCU the week before.
It's a classic. Yeah. One score games, not Michigan absolutely turning into actual Wolverines and ripping them to shreds.
All right, so that's
the second
one
half.
quote. All right. Without a doubt, on the Big Ten should end up with 2 teams in the college football playoff. Now, I understand he's doing his job.
Yeah.
And there might still be 2 because we don't know what's going to happen this weekend. Okay, that's fine. But the instant classic was just 100% clearly Michigan and Ohio State are 2 of the best 4 teams in the country. That's arguable, but how can you say that? Again, this is job. After they just got bloodied by Michigan.
I would make the argument that they're 2 of the best 6 teams in the country.
Okay.
Or 2 of the best 5, but 2 of the best 4 right now. Look, Ohio State, and it is not their fault that their schedule turned out the way it did. But they played 2, really good teams this year. And one of them was, I guess Penn State's in there too, right?
Notre Dame, Penn State.
Notre Dame, so they played 3.
It's pretty good.
And, the best one they played beat them badly. They had a hard time early on with Notre Dame. So, are they better than anybody else in that? I think there's arguments that can be made. So I don't think it's without a doubt. But again, this is his job to try to get him in.
Yeah, that's the problem I'm having with this. I get we can break through his quotes and everything. I don't agree it was an instant classic, but I mean the man's just doing what he's paid to do. He's paid to be a shill for the conference, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I probably should have used a different word. Because I don't mean it disrespectfully. He's just doing what he's supposed to do. So I don't really, even if he's totally off base with what he's saying, that's just what he has to do.
He's doing it for his constituents.
I mean, I appreciate that he put up this fight, 2 of the best teams in the country and all that. I mean, I'll still, hold it against Bob Bowlesby for 2014. And the fact that he just backed off and wouldn't do anything. Kevin Warren's fighting for his conference. And I know that Bowlesby was trying to somehow magically get 2 small private Texas schools into the playoffs somehow or another, I guess was his end goal. But they got none ultimately. So
the last quote, great football game, epic football game. Again, that's very close to saying it was an instant classic. It was a hell of a game. I did not stop watching it because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And why not? Because Michigan did the same thing basically last year.
Well, who's going to tell me he's wrong when they got nearly 20 million viewers tuning into it. Like it wasn't the most competitive game, but it was a great, college football atmosphere and game and reaction and pageantry and all of those things. And plus, were they catching him like walking off the field asking these questions too in the heat of that? So
may have been later on.
I don't really blame him for that. I don't agree though that those are two of the best 4 teams in the country. I do not agree with that.
No, look, Michigan knocked the Just for Man out of Ryan Day's beard, and it was just that bad of a second half for them. And it's the second year in a row they've done it. So. Yeah, I mean, classic. I don't know. I mean, it was, again, if you're a Michigan fan.
It was not an instant classic.
No. If you're a Michigan fan, you're going to look back over the last 2 years and feel this great catharsis of, a decade and a half of total futility gone.
Let me tell you what that game reminded me of in the second half. And it's not the same, but it reminded me of 2001 when Colorado battered Nebraska 62-36. Now, that sent Nebraska into 2 decades spin. It's not going to do that to Ohio State. They might even be in the playoff, and who knows once they get back in the playoffs if they get that opportunity again. But it was very similar to the way the second half went, where you saw a very impressive, powerful alpha getting just bloodied by somebody else. Now, the Nick Saban quotes. This is after what for them was they looked kind of like themselves against Auburn, who ended up being obviously a 5-win team or whatever they were. On the college football playoff chances, I don't make those decisions, but I know what a resilient football team this has been. All right. We've lost 2 games to top 10 opponents, both on the last play of the game and both on the road. Truth?
Yes.
We're a good football team, and hopefully people will recognize that and will get a chance to play in the playoffs. He's not begging anybody. He's making some points. He knows that it's out of his control, which it's never been since since the playoffs started when he's at Alabama.
Yeah, but, I do think that something has to be said for teams that have 2 losses and don't play in the conference title game. Now, if you have 1 loss and don't play in the conference title game, or that loss happens to be in the conference title game, there's more precedent for that. But if you have 2 losses, not in the conference title game, I think there has to be, even for holy Alabama, there has to be some sort of punishment for that. There has to be, they can't just keep getting mulligans because the TV ratings are good, or because, they have better players than most people. Well, yeah, but those better players didn't have the better record. So something has to happen. I mean, just ethically, it seems like they should do that.
So how do y'all feel about the fact that they'll be in a future playoff?
I mean, it's 12 teams. That's fine to me, because you're going to have multiple teams like that. But if you're talking about the 4 teams that have earned it, like we're trying to, thread a needle here, and you would not make that excuse. Again, if most of the other teams behind Alabama, Oregon, if Oregon tried to make that argument,
they get the benefit of the doubt. Let's just say they get the Alabama bump because they're Alabama and it's Alabama. And so they can have 2 losses and have this argument because, I mean, granted the games, we're close and whatnot, but, other schools with 2 losses, we would have already ruled it out and would never even have posted their quote about it from their head coach.
No question. Yeah. No. And I don't know, is there anything that can happen this weekend? We know Ohio State will be number 5 tomorrow, most likely. Is there anything that can happen this weekend that Alabama can get in? Because with LSU losing, is it
12?
No, I'm talking about this year. I'm talking about
the title
Alabama being in the semifinals if something bizarre happens this weekend.
Yeah, TCU loses in the Big 12 title game. That's a step. USC loses in the Pac-12 title game. That's another step. Like,
if both lose, I can see it happening.
Yeah.
I can see it.
Yes, it's how it would happen.
I asked you this earlier. If TCU loses to Kansas State, it's a damn good 30-27 whatever game. If they do, and man, TCU just beating people up right now. Although, again, against Baylor, they needed something to happen, and they won that defensive struggle in Austin. If they were a part of the Big Ten or the SEC, would there even be a concern about whether they lost this weekend to a team that's going to be in the top 10 in the college football standings?
I think that there would be a different conversation. At this point, I'm just sort of used to this whole thing. So, I don't want to be like defeated and just let them have their way, but they're going to anyways. And they being like the college football overseers and decision makers and the loudest voices on televisions. I mean, there would be a totally different debate. It would, question everything from their game control to their strength of schedule and all of that because of the league they play in. And it's just always interesting to hear the number of people that talk about said league that clearly don't watch said league. I think that it's abundantly clear when talking about TCU for some people on television that they're just learning about the Frogs. And look, I don't pretend to know everything about everybody, but I mean, they've been undefeated all year, and I still feel like they're not getting much respect at all from a lot of the people who are supposed to have the respected voices. So that is what it is. But yeah, no, definitely. If they lose, they're done. They're not in the playoff, in my opinion. I don't think they're in the playoff if they lose this weekend, despite all that they have done. So on the other hand, for the argument of like, oh, well, you don't need an expanded playoff because Alabama wouldn't get in like they don't deserve to this year. But on the other hand, TCU loses one game to a team they've already beat at the end of the year. And who knows, like that could be by 1 point and that's enough to eliminate them from the conversation. But the team that lost a couple games now gets back into it because they just lost earlier.
Yep.
Like, how does the whole they lost earlier so they get a better shot? I think that's BS. It was like the whole let's hold Oregon out. Okay, if you want to hold Oregon out because they got destroyed by Georgia, that's one thing. Like, you got blown out, even if it is to the best team walking this earth. But it happened in week 1. Like, are we holding that against them the rest of the season? I just think that is absurd. In the old way of doing college football, and you only had 2 teams, whether it was the BCS or the polls, okay, there's only 2. But this whole thing of like, you lost in week 1, now you're basically done. I just think that's teams get better along the way, and I don't think that the current system really rewarded that all that much. It was about where you started in the polls and how you hung on to that, and then we see how the polls get massaged every week with the number of top 25 wins and who sneaks into the bottom to prop this team up and do all of that. So I think it's kind of silly that we're even having this debate. But yeah, I think if TCU loses this weekend, they're done. Whether they deserve to be or not, I think that's probably the way that it goes, because I think people have just been waiting for that one spot on their record that they can go, all right, see, told you, they're frauds. They don't deserve a shot at it. That's how I feel.
All right, we'll see. The release of the standings come out tomorrow. There'll be a little bit of change because of the LSU loss. And Tennessee, they'll be at least in the mix, although there's another team that, because of the loss to South Carolina, you wonder what happens with them. So a lot to get to. Your feedback, we appreciate a lot of you. Kayuzu.
Tennessee was out of the South Carolina loss.
Yeah. No, I said that despite but they're in that little like hovering. Which did you like best or prefer? The old Big 8, the old Big 12, or the original Big 12, the current Big 12, or the future Big 12? Well, I'm going to give you the original Big 12 was really a damn good idea, but they had so much bitterness, so much lack of trust, and so many agendas even before the conference really ever got together, that if they would have just all like gotten along like the SEC does, even though some of those rivalries, they hate each other, it would be an incredible conference. But it was always dysfunctional. And that's why it's been rated maybe more than any other conference in the last 10 or 15 years. The original Big 8, what I loved about it was that they played 4 non-conference games, and usually they were always national games. Washington State, I'm talking about Nebraska in 95, Michigan State, Washington State, Oklahoma State, and UCLA. You don't see that ever anymore.
No, and I think you'll see more of it as the strength of schedule will get you to that, at least to the 12th spot, in the college football playoff as that grows. But yeah, you don't see it anymore. The original Big 12 again was a great idea. It's kind of like the Pac-12 network, where the Pac-12, they had a great idea that they were going to own their own network and they would have a bunch of money if it worked, but they weren't good enough to get it on DirecTV, and that killed them. Ultimately, the Big 12 was a great idea, but they didn't start out with the plan to work together. They started out with a plan of like, well, we're coming together, but these schools are more valuable than these schools, and we're going to make it every chance we get.
Yeah.
I'm too young really for the Big 8. I don't have really a bunch of grand recollections from that time period. So I'd say the original Big 12 just on at least it felt like it had some stability early on for like a couple of years before it didn't feel like it had stability anymore. I just think that the selection of teams was stronger as far as like brand names go. And I'm not Mr. Brand Name by any mean. I don't need a brand name to enjoy a college football playoff game or national championship or any of it. But I do think that they had a little bit more oomph because they had bigger viewership, in terms of the fan bases, having Missouri, having Nebraska, having Colorado, having Texas, having all those names and the built-in rivalries that kind of came with them from the Big Eight or from the Southwest Conference intermingling. There's a lot of potential there. I think they blew that potential because of egos and just agendas and money and all those types of things. But I don't think the conference ever really scratched the surface of what it could have been because there's just too many little fits going on, too many little fights going on. So that's the one that I would pick just as far as strength goes. But it's been a lot of fun to watch these last couple of years.
The original Big 12, for those that don't know, in the North you had Nebraska, Kansas State, Kansas, Colorado, Missouri, and Iowa State. In the South you had Oklahoma, Texas, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Texas A&M, and Baylor. Those were the 12. And you look at that, and what you had and what you basically, it was disintegrated in many ways. So that was the question. KU Zoo, thank you very much for asking the question. All right, when we come back, we have David Hellman, Dallas Cowboys reporter for many years now, working nationally for Fox Sports. Cowboys and the NFC East now has 4 teams, not just above 500, 7-5 or better, but so does the AFC East with 4 teams above 500 at 6-5 or better. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, got a lot of great deals going on right now at Richard Carr, the people that you can count on, not only for the purchase of your vehicle, but for the life of your car with their great customer service as well. I can attest to that, as I've had my car over there to get fixed up on more than one occasion, and they've done a great job. But right now, finally, after a couple years of supply chain issues and microchip shortages and all that comes with that, dealerships have been hit pretty hard, but it finally feels like over the last few weeks and last couple months in particular, that's all starting to rev back up, and there are new cars and trucks and SUVs on the lot over at Richard Carr. The wait over, trucks and SUVs on the lot. Those include the 2022 GMC Sierras. They include Acadias. They include Terrains. They have all arrived, waiting for you to test drive today. How about Cadillac XT4 SUV? How about the XT5 SUV? When it comes to the Sierra, for example, they got all these different bells and whistles that you can check out, and this goes for all the models on their lot. But, if you haven't bought a new car in a while, you've been driving around like I did for a long time, and, old beat-up model that was pretty outdated, well, you'll be amazed when you look at the Sierra and see the best-in-class towing, when you see its strong steel bed, when you see its multi-pro tailgate, its advanced collision avoidance, its luxurious interior, massive touchscreens, 14 camera views, and, of course, premium comfort. That's all a part of the GMC Sierra, and all of the other vehicles have a lot of those same characteristics, those same options for you as well. Maybe, though, you don't see exactly what you're looking for. There's just a couple things that you like differently. Well, get on their inbound vehicle list, and you can cut in line for trucks, cars, SUVs that are in production but not quite in stock. If there's something not quite available just yet that you like a little bit better than what they have, then get on that inbound vehicle list. You'll be first come, first serve whenever those vehicles are ready, and even more customization is possible, or a little bit of a different look is possible. If you don't see exactly what you're looking for, we'll talk to the good folks there at the dealership, and they can help you tweak and personalize that vehicle to have it more up your alley and make it more to your liking. So again, that goes back to the customer service of the good folks at Richard Carr. 23 years in Central Texas, having built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Richard Carr, run by proud Wacos, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
The wait is over. Richard Carr GMC has the trucks. 2022 GMC Sierras have hit the lot, and they're waiting for you. Sierra trucks offer best-in-class towing, strong steel beds, multi-pro tailgates, and advanced features that make driving a Sierra second to none. Trucks are waiting for you to test drive now. So call now, log in now, or get here now and drive your next truck today at Richard Carr.
Richard Carr, they have the truck for you.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgin Ford. It's that time of year. It's football season. And BK Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football teams in Texas, right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, led by our leading rusher, the F-150, 45 years in a row. Lock in your best price and rate today by custom ordering your new F-150 at BK Ford. Simple, easy, trusted. Experience better at Bird Colgin Ford.
Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injuries, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel and Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel and Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel and Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Howdy, Chet Garner here, professional guide, searching for bears in the wild. But not just any bears, oh no, a particular kind. With hundreds of thousands roaming freely in the wild, yet still hard to spot unless you know the signs. There they are, Baylor bears. If you're a bear enthusiast or even a bear yourself, join me and let's find some bears in the wild.
Join the expedition at Baylor.edu/alumni.
Genco's Black Friday Cyber Monday Auto Loan Special is here. Apply for your auto loan online and receive a 0.15% loan discount. Plus, every auto loan gets 90 days with no payments. Then have a chance to win 90 more days with no payments. Black Friday Cyber Monday only at Genco. This special runs till December 2nd. Every online application gets an additional discount plus 90 days no payments. Only at Genco. Subject to credit approval, membership eligibility, and loan policies. For more information, go to gencofcu.org, member NCUA.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
First and goal. He's found 5 different targets. He's going to hand it off. It's Pollard, and he's across for the Dallas touchdown.
It's time for our weekly segment with David Hellman of FoxSports.com.
All right, a couple of notes, by the way, to pass along to you. We will have, it looks like Travius Hodges Tomlinson of TCU, the cornerback, should join us at some point this week, I think Wednesday. And then also Davis of North Texas, their star linebacker. Katie Davis, is that right? He will join us at some point Wednesday's show as well, as we focus in on a few of the conference championship games and just the week of college football, joined by David Hellman. David, I apologize. I did not send you the flare like I normally do earlier in the day to join us, so we appreciate you being a part of the show. Man, what are your thoughts about the NFC East with now everybody 7-5 or better?
It's hard to process. I guess those are my thoughts. I mean, really, I'm turning 34 in a few weeks, so like I'm not crazy old, but I'm getting to the age where, I'm not young anymore. Like, I've definitely got long memories of football in the NFL going back a ways, but I'm young enough that, when people talk about the NFC East of the 80s and 90s, like, when all of the teams were trading off winning Super Bowls from like 86 to 92, like, that does not register with me. I have never in my life associated all four of these franchises with success, and definitely not at the same time. So to see all of them, not just above 500, but like they're all pretty good. Like even Washington they're 6-1 over the last 7 games. They're 7-5. I'm not penciling them into the Super Bowl by any stretch, but they are a team that can hang with just about anybody on the right day. And that, even for them, is a far cry from what we're used to. So it's a ton of fun. I mean, if the playoffs ended today, all 4 of them would be in. Yeah. It feels like it's like a 1988 or 1990 throwback, I guess.
Yeah, David, if you told me at the beginning of the year, at this point in the season, one of the best teams left in the Cowboys schedule would be Washington, I'd have been like, what? No way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So Thanksgiving Day was obviously, that's another step that the Cowboys have taken. They swept the Giants this year. They kind of overcame some slow starts and really dominated in that game. This team feels a little different to me than teams in the past, but I can't put my finger on it. What do you think is the biggest difference, at least at this point in the season, compared to a couple of their playoff runs that they've had?
Oh, see, it's funny. I hate to be a downer, but that game reminded me a lot of last year.
Yep.
Honestly.
I agree.
Like, it reminded me of last year's team where I was like, okay, you messed around for a half. You made some stupid mistakes. You had 13 penalties. You pulled it together enough to win comfortably. And there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for playing a bad game and winning comfortably. But what I wrote for Fox Sports after the game, I was like, okay, this is cool, but this gets you beat by good teams. This gets you beat in the playoffs. It gets you beat when you play the types of teams that are going to be there at the end of the year. And that's what we saw last year. And that's the expectation for this team at this point. Since Dak has come back, the offense looks like what we've gotten used to seeing. It's not the best offense in the NFL, but it's more than good enough. They've got the best pass rush. This isn't a team that should be happy to be where they are, I guess is my point. And so I look at that game and I'm like, okay, cool. You played like crap and won, but that will get you sent home in the first round again. And so I'm not ready to say that it's different. I think they look a lot like the team from last year. And I think for me, I don't know if they're going to win the division, but I think we can comfortably say that the Cowboys are going to make the playoffs, barring a disaster. And so the next 6 weeks for me are about achieving some consistency and not looking like a team that's going to fall apart, incur 13 penalties in a game and score 17 points. So Thanksgiving, it didn't do a ton to alleviate my concern about that. But hey, it's better to get a win after a performance like that than not.
Paul and I have a group back and forth text during Cowboys games a lot of times. And I kind of felt like you're right. Last year's team would have lost that game. This year's team, they found a way to win it, but they were playing with fire. And does Zeke now feel like he's 25 for a little bit after a couple of weeks of getting a break?
Yeah, he looks good. And people want this controversy to be a thing so badly just so they have something to talk about. But like when Zeke's been healthy these last 2 years, he's looked good. Not saying he's the best running back in the league. Not saying that it justifies his salary, but those are problems for the offseason. He looks good. He looks like the time off did him well. He looks explosive. Even he's not going to the house from 40 yards out like Tony does, but he provides explosive ability in his own way, and he certainly provides physicality. So it's a fantastic 1-2 punch. It's a good problem to have when both of your running backs look like starters. So hopefully he can keep that up and stay healthy this time around, because I know obviously with a partially torn PCL, he was never at 100% last year from like week 4 onward. So hopefully he can buck that trend this time around.
David, the tight ends continue to be impressive. 2 of them rookies, 1 of them undrafted. It was something that in the post Jason Witten era, the Cowboys were always kind of trying to get right, and it looks like they've kind of hit on something here.
I will gladly eat some crow. It's not that I didn't think Jake Ferguson would be a good player, because tight end is an incredibly hard position to transition to. Like Dalton Schultz, we were debating whether or not he would be on the team entering his 3rd year. That's how hard it was for him to transition to the NFL and make a consistent impact. Like unless you're a TJ Hawkinson or a Kyle Pitts, like the type of guy that gets drafted in the top 10, it's very hard to transition to tight end in the NFL. Even Jason Witten, as a 3rd round pick, needed a year. So I just kind of was like, okay, Jake Ferguson is a pick for the future. This is a guy that you'll be, we'll find out what he's all about year 2, year 3. And I couldn't have been more wrong. Like, he's already a very good, very useful player. He's useful as a blocker. He's good in the receiving game. He's very underrated as a yak guy. Like, he's got some real burst for a white guy from Wisconsin. Like I said, I don't want to say I was wrong, because I thought he'd be a good player, but he's just come along faster than I ever thought. And then, Peyton Hendershot. It's so funny with these undrafted free agents, because you go to training camp. I remember, like, he was struggling to catch balls at training camp. Like, he looked like a camp body to me for the first couple of weeks. And then we got to the games, and he started getting more opportunities, and he looks better and better, and he built on the confidence from that. I went into training camp thinking, like, man, this really looks like it's going to be Dalton Schultz and a bunch of nothing. And that clearly has not been the case. I think top to bottom, it has been one of the more impressively, like, deep units on the team in terms of getting contributions from everybody.
How much does Will McClay, or how much should Will McClay get, or should he get more credit for the talent acquisitions that they've really made the last couple of years since he became even more involved?
I think I like to think that smart Cowboy fans know exactly who Will is and what he does. Like, people that really follow the team and live and die with the Cowboys, I think he gets plenty of credit. And you see it on social media and message boards and radio interviews. Will, he's not out there to the degree that Jerry Jones is talking on the radio every week, but like, Will regularly gives interviews. And I think, like I said, I think smart people know that Will is in charge of the draft process. And it's a testament to how much Will wants to be with the Cowboys. I think that he hasn't gotten an opportunity somewhere else. I absolutely think if he really wanted to be a GM for another team, that would have happened by now. But I think Will really he really likes the structure in Dallas. He likes being a part of this, and he wants to help the Cowboys get back to that level. So I think it's a testament to that, how much he enjoys it there, that he's still there. But the results speak for themselves. Will's been in charge of the draft process since 2014, and you go down the line of the guys that they've added in that time, whether it's Zach Martin and DeMarcus Lawrence, whether it's Dak Prescott, whether it's CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, it's not all going to be hits. Even Will would say that, but I think this is, over the last 8 years, this has been one of the most consistently talented rosters in the league, and we complain about it so much. We know the Cowboys aren't adding talent in free agency, so that leads to draft, and I think it's a testament to how well he and all of his scouts do their jobs, that the Cowboys are almost exclusively a draft and develop team, and they still manage to be a playoff contender year in and year out.
I do wonder what, if he became the GM of a different team, what his the differences in his responsibilities would be, because it seems like most of that he does have.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for Will. I love Will. He's one of my favorite people in the organization. But like I said, I think it's a very good structure for anybody in that position. Because Will has a lot of sway over personnel. He's involved in all those decisions. He talks to Mike McCarthy on a daily basis. He talks to Jerry and Stephen Jones on a daily basis. If anything, I think, Jerry and Stephen Jones are kind of like a shield, if you will, for Will McClay, just because they are still calling the shots at the end of the day. They are the ones speaking in the media. So they're going to take a lot more criticism than Will does. And I think, there's nothing wrong with admitting that that's a nice place to be. I think you get a lot of the power and a lot of the experience and sway without as much of the scrutiny that would come if you were the GM at another place. So I think it's a good arrangement for everybody. And honestly, I think that's why Will is still here. He knows that he's appreciated, and he knows that he's making significant contributions to this team going where it wants to.
David, I want to end the segment now, but Paul's a very angry individual.
I'm not. I wanted to ask that it was very rude, or say it was very rude of LSU for you to come all the way from Los Angeles to that game in Kyle Field to lay their biggest egg of the year. I thought that was rude of them.
I'm a big boy. I knew that this would come up, and hey, I agree. I thought it was very rude. It's but it's very. Football's so funny. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's been a dream season for LSU. If you told me before the season that they're going to go 9-3, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's a wonderful first season for Brian Kelly. And then you tell me that they're going to beat Bama in a classic and make it to the SEC title game. I'm over cloud nine. And I mean, it's still a very successful season. Aggie fans, as usual, are trying to drum this up and make it a rivalry. They ruined our season because they ruined our playoff hopes. Anybody with an ounce of common sense knows this LSU team wasn't winning the national title. But having said all of that, I'm just did it have to be A&M? Did it have to be these nerds that messed everything up? I was literally joking with my friends afterwards. I was but that's the crazy, that's what I love so much about college football, because you're man, I can't believe we lost to A&M, and you're sitting there, you're I would trade this win or that win to beat A&M. But then I was looking at the schedule, I was well, I'm not giving away the Bama game, I'm not giving away the Ole Miss game, I'm not giving away the Florida game, I'm not giving away the Arkansas game. It's that's the beauty of college football, is you live and die with every single result. So, yeah, it sucks we lost to A&M, but, I wouldn't give away a different win in order to have beaten them, if that makes sense. That's just this life in the SEC. You're not usually completely happy unless you go undefeated. So, congrats to them. It was pretty painful, just, to ride the high that we've been on for the last 6 weeks and to just so thoroughly get outplayed by such a bad team was very, very deflating.
David, I will say this. I grew up in a family of Aggies, and I do think that I never thought I would see something more embarrassing than the Appalachian State yell leader video, but rushing the field with your 5th win at the end of the season.
And
topped it.
You know what? And look, I don't like A&M, but I mean, LSU's rushed the field in situations like that too. I mean, let people be excited and enjoy the things that they want to enjoy. I don't hold that against them. I thought it was very tacky that they played Colin Baton Rouge when they did it, which again, A&M desperately wants this to be a rivalry so that they don't have to talk about Texas. I'm not going to give them that honor. I don't view A&M as a rival. I just view them as the annoying guys with all the weird cheers. But it definitely bummed me out to lose to them. But no, I mean, if they want to rush the field, that's fine.
They don't like to have it called cheers, by the way.
I'm sorry. You're right. They're yells.
Yeah.
They're yells.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that was
the
shocking.
Yell leaders and yeah. You know what? I mean, don't get me wrong. It's shocking to get so thoroughly outplayed. But that's college football. I told a buddy of mine went to A&M, and before the game we were having a beer, And I was like, it's college football, man. It's a bunch of kids. They've had a rough season. This is their last chance to like make a statement that they're better than this, and nothing would make them happier than to keep us out of the playoff. Like, I didn't expect to lose, but I was like, this is going to be a stressful game. Like, we're not getting out of here scot-free, just like, you know, winning 50-0 and going home. Like, that's not going to happen. So, that's what you love about college football. That's what makes a season like 2019 so special, is that we really did beat everybody's ass that bad.
Yep, you did.
But you only get a season like that every now and then, and this was not one of those. So, congrats to the Aggies. Hopefully we can return the favor next year.
David, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Appreciate your time. David Hellman, Fox Sports, on many things: Cowboys, the NFC East, NFL, and also the LSU and A&M game.
A&M had more reason to rush than Tech against Oklahoma.
Yeah, I guess
they had the same record.
Yeah.
And they were already bowl eligible. Mm-hmm. But I guess it was the first time they'd beaten Texas and OU, and it was an OT game.
I saw that, yeah. I did see that.
But if we're going by the rules of rushing the field, you don't rush against a team who has the same exact record as you do.
No, and I am a fuddy-duddy when it comes to rushing the field. Like, I think you got to save it, you know, for really big moments. My alma mater rushed the field the other day, and I was like 80% against it because we never used to. I mean, never.
But never included the kind of stretch they've been through.
It happened in '94 when they had the choke at the Doak. That was the last time it happened, and I kind of liked the mystique that was the last time it was ever going to happen. But again, eras change.
Speaking of which, Florida State now in the top 15 at 14. The top 5 in both polls are Georgia, Michigan, TCU, USC, Ohio State. We'll be surprised if that's not the 5 tomorrow night. Team that went way down, LSU dropped to a 13. Texas at 21, UCF at 22 and 23 in each poll. UTSA and Jeff Traylor, they have North Texas this Friday, and they're 23 and 24 in both polls. Kansas State 13th and 1. That's a little low. And 10 in what I think is the coaches poll. Now, one quick note. Caleb Williams has 34 touchdown passes and 10 rushing touchdowns this season, becoming second player in Pac-12 history with 30 touchdowns passing or more and 10 touchdowns on the ground in a single season. Marcus Mariota, 8 years ago.
Also a Heisman Trophy.
Won the Heisman Trophy that year. Here's another note, and then we go to the top 5. Mississippi State won its 7th game over an AP-ranked team under Mike Leach. That's why it's crazy that number. None of those 7 wins was when Mississippi State was ranked. So it's not like they beat a ranked team and they were ranked. 7 times they've done it under Mike Leach. No other school has more than 4 wins as an unranked team against ranked opponents in any of the last 3 seasons. So Mike Leach with the huge win in the Egg Bowl against Ole Miss, and Paul's top 5 is next.
This month, Allen Samuelson Waco is having the Black Friday sales event. You can save big on the new 2022 Ram 1500 Crew Cab with total values up to $4,250 with 2.9% for 72 months. That's right, plus an extra $500 bonus cash to first responders and no payments until January 2023. Shop an award-winning dealership with award-winning product. Allen Samuelson Waco, the place to shop Ram trucks.
Come by, let's be friends.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible and rewarding challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingham with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like our free First mobile app, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. That's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year, whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 5:55.
Top 5 observations from the weekend.
Boy, there's a lot of Cincinnati fans hoping you do a top 5 Bearcat coaching search.
I will. I have Stanford up there too, so that might be the rest of this week. What I do worry about is I'm going to do it in the morning, and then by the time I get to the afternoon, these things kind of move so fast now that I'll be like the top 5 Stanford coaches. Crap.
Yeah.
It's Bill O'Brien. There you go.
Well,
so, whatever it is.
Who puts together the graphics?
Emery does.
Well, he's too nice. I thought it was Levi. He's evil. So Emery, I don't want to ever put more on Emery's plate. He has enough.
So, okay. Emery does this. Number 5, something's off at Clemson right now. They look, they're good. They finished the regular season 10-2. They still have a lot of talent on that team. They are, I don't know if it's losing Tony Elliott. I don't know what the situation is there, but something is weird at Clemson why they cannot get over this, and look like Clemson anymore. And I don't think that that they're in their decline, but I do think that Dabo Swinney would be wise to do what he did when he brought in Tony Elliott and those guys and brought in Brent Venables and go maybe outside the family a little bit to spruce up what's going on there. Because they just, all year, they've had so many, well, come on, Clemson, let's get going games, and they just don't look like they used to be.
What was it, a 38-game home winning streak or something that they had, and gets knocked out? But South Carolina's a red-hot team. Who would have thought of that? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, is that overreaction?
I don't think so, because I'm basing it on the whole year of this was a team that was dominating their league and competing for national championships. And all year long, I mean, most people who watch Clemson are like, something's going on here. They don't seem that good.
They're 10-2. And they were 11-2 last year. Mm-hmm. Man, I know a lot of programs that would love that, but then they were the ones who were able to bloody Alabama's nose once and play for a couple of national titles and win a couple of them. Yeah,
I'm just saying that if they don't, if they don't fix whatever is off, then they're going to be kind of perpetually stuck in this like hamster wheel.
Yeah, Got to find out what's off first.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's already said it. I think a lot of people have pointed to it, which is that the fact that they need to kind of probably branch out of the Clemson family and the Dabo-Clemson tie-ins, that they've all been kind of incestuous, and they need to have some fresh ideas, basically, is what – and I don't know who the first person was to point to that. Many have over the last year or so in particular. And some maybe even forewarned about this, when they started losing coordinators. But, clearly there's something off. It's not quite the juggernaut that it was, even if it – you say they're 10-2. Yeah, they're still more talented than most everybody. They didn't lose all their players.
Yeah.
So what is different? Well, the players might not be as good, like at quarterback. You don't have Trevor freaking Lawrence back there slinging it around, or Deshaun Watson, or, those types of guys. You don't have freaking, stellar receiver after stellar receiver pouring through the doors like you maybe once did upon a time, but they still got more talent than most. And yeah, I think it's a little stale. That's what it is. They need to freshen things up and within the walls of that, of those football offices, most likely.
And the league's getting a little bit better behind them.
There's that.
They have to worry about that. Number 4, Wisconsin and Nebraska go big with their hires, and I thought that Nebraska would. I did not know about Wisconsin. I thought Wisconsin was going to stay in-house. I think everybody did with Jim Leonhard. But addressing the fact that realignment is a major factor in going forward with building a program, and that you're going to have some juice and some excitement. This is important to do that, to get your big hires and get your hires right. And, Luke Fickell, I think at Wisconsin is a perfect fit and a home run hire, and he'll do great there. We've talked about Matt Rhule at length, and everybody knows we have the relationship with him. He was on the show today. But I think that's the one, admitting you got to go big. And then for Nebraska, admitting that you need a builder, not someone who's going to come in and just, I'll restore the glory years in a couple years, it'll be fine. Somebody who acknowledges that the whole house needs to be rebuilt. That's what Matt Rhule is. In Wisconsin, who's had one down year and swinging for the fences with the best Group of 5 coach that there was.
Yeah, I do think the Rhule Nebraska thing's not entirely surprising. That's a great gig for him. He's going to have a great setup and a lot of security and some time to build that thing and do it in his own image. Whereas I was a little surprised by Fickell in Wisconsin. Not that I don't think Wisconsin's like a better job overall. It's just like your path at Cincinnati was a lot better, potentially to a playoff now. Expanded playoff, maybe that doesn't matter. Like, that's the thing, is all these variables that rule all these other things out that normally would be issues. But I was a little surprised. It's like all this speculation about Ohio State this or this job and that. It's like Wisconsin. I just don't know anybody that had that pegged. And as you heard earlier, nobody really did. But I will be curious. There's a lot of the whole, this is, a sign. And I even said it earlier about the Big Ten and the money difference and how that, I don't think the Wisconsin and Nebraska jobs, though, are necessarily indicative of like that. Like, let me see Indiana go steal somebody from a pretty good program, and then I'll start to really buy into, like, all right, it's all about the money now, because, it's Wisconsin and Nebraska. I know Wisconsin doesn't necessarily have title after title nationally like Nebraska does hanging up in the rafters, but still a really solid program after a really long period of time. So, yeah, the moment we see Indiana go swipe like the sitting head coach, or got like Lance Leipold or something, that's when I would really get worried about the disparity.
Yeah. Number 3, and I did write this before the Hugh Freeze thing, but I still kind of think this. Auburn remains an uncontrolled mess. I do think that hiring Hugh Freeze, as far as on the football field, is one of the best things you can do. The guy has had one losing season in 12 years as a college head coach, so he's got a proven track record. I wonder if if this will work given the two parties. And I do believe that Hugh Freeze, sure, give him another chance, but I don't know. If I were an Auburn fan, I'd be like, fine, but I don't feel confident about how this is going to end.
Yeah, I think he's a good football coach. The ending to his Liberty tenure was pretty disastrous, just because there's obviously a lot of, injuries, but also a lot of distractions because of him, obviously clearly throwing his name out there for jobs. On the surface, just like not getting into all the off the field stuff, like just as a pure football coach, it seems like a really good hire and probably one of the better ones that you could have made. But yeah, I think all the other stuff, it would give me some pause. I find the dude to just be an outright fraud. I really do. I don't like him as far as like the vibes I get off of him. I think that he plays the Jesus card way too willy-nilly, and I just don't trust people like that. So I'm not a huge fan of him in that regard, but I will say he's a really good football coach. And if it is in fact a mess, then that's kind of fitting that they hired Hugh Freeze, is it not? I mean, it just kind of goes with it's like the drapes match the carpet, I guess. But yeah, this will be a fascinating little experiment, and and how it goes and what it turns into ultimately. I mean, maybe he's helping once Saban steps down, leading Auburn to the top of the West, competing with Brian Kelly and LSU or whatever. Actually, there won't be a West, will there? Here pretty soon. There won't be. But anyways, maybe he has massive success. I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of the guy.
You know what he'll do? He'll win there.
Yeah, he'll win.
I don't know about how high of a level. I'm not sure in a national
That's all they care about. Let's just admit it.
But at Auburn, he will win. Hell of a football coach. Obviously an individual that has some issues, and he will win at Auburn.
Yeah. Number 2. TCU can taste the CFP. The way that they destroyed Iowa State, I think they very clearly see their goals in front of them. Well, and look, they're going to have a tough game against Kansas State. That's probably the team that, you can argue played them off their feet the most this year and the most for the longest.
Rotation of quarterbacks?
Yeah. And now you're going to have Will Howard the whole time. So that game could be very different. But I do think that game against Iowa State and destroying a really good defense, albeit at the end of their season, kind of shows that they can feel what's in front of them, and they are very locked in.
Yeah, I don't know who I'm picking just yet in that game. I'm kind of leaning TCU, but I can understand everybody that's going the K-State route on this one. Certainly, I do think that's the part that kind of sucks here is that if you're TCU and you lose this game, like you lose 28-27, you can miss the playoff. By losing one game at the end of the year in a conference title to a team you already beat that's top 15 by a point, and you can miss the playoff.
Yep.
I just think that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Like, explain to me how that, other than you just needing, like, the gratification of being entranced in every little moment of a game to be entertained, like, you have to be jolted. Like, what? Tell me how that makes any sense.
It doesn't.
I mean, it really doesn't. It's one thing if it was like elimination style playoffs. Okay, you lose the playoff game, but this isn't that. This is, I don't know. I just find that kind of silly for the season that they've had. But yeah, I mean, they're knocking on the door. They're one step away, and they do seem like a program that more often than not, when they have the opportunity, they take advantage of it. There's a lot of others that get opportunities. They go 500 or they whiff on a majority of them. And TCU, they seem to answer the call quite often. So. Good for them.
They beat the living snot out of Iowa State in a game again that, if they would have started tight and played poorly, you get a little bit, you start to hyperventilate. They blew their doors off and never looked back. They look fantastic right now.
Yep. And number 1, Jim Harbaugh has flipped the script. It took him a long time to do it at Michigan, but he owns Ryan Day right now. I mean, he absolutely does those last 2 times around, and he's always been like Jim Harbaugh is a peculiar dude. Like, he is different. He runs on a different wavelength than most of us. But it is working at Michigan right now. And now that his little flirtation last year with the Vikings, that's over, it appears that Michigan is just on this train right now. And he finally got a quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, that is kind of a playmaker and not just a game manager. This is, I'm kind of surprised because I really didn't think it would happen because I thought Ohio State would kind of always just be that team with them because of the last 15 years. But, man, the last 2 years have shown you he's not messing around.
I mean, he's a really good football coach.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just bottom line, he's a really good football coach, and has been for a long time now. I mean, this dude was winning at Stanford when everybody's talking about how hard it is winning at Stanford. I mean, just you can look at various moments in his career for evidence of just what a great coach he is. And, yeah, there's certainly been some pitfalls there and some embarrassing losses, especially to Ohio State. But, Rome isn't built in a day. I mean, that's the thing now is, like, what were you going to do? You go fire Jim Harbaugh and go get, who exactly? I think, obviously there was the NFL flirtations. I think those would probably go away now at this point. But I think it's great that both sides ended up settling in and he didn't go anywhere and they didn't balk, and, it led to this. So sometimes you got to let situations play out, and, they did, and it did for whatever reasons, and it seems like they're probably all happy in Ann Arbor right at the moment.
All right, Paul, fantastic. It's great to have everybody back again. Even Emory stayed for the whole show. Jack McKenzie, he did too. And I'm trying to say who maybe spoke less. He, Jacob, Jack, Garrett.
They're locked in working.
Yeah. I hope you're enjoying whatever leftovers you may have for Thanksgiving, if in fact you do. And again, it's coming up on championship week. We'll get into some other analysts this week. USC and their game with Utah, UCF and their game coming up with Tulane, among others, and, of course, TCU, Kansas State, and Georgia against LSU and Michigan and Purdue. For Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, it's great to have everybody back. It's great to have you back, our great sponsors as well. 365 Sports, good night.